as well as in India, where we have tried many to reach out to many agriculture institutions and universities who have known about these aspects, but sometimes was getting neglected. So that is another reason we wanted this Congress to be here, and this kind of topic needs to come out. And the last reason, which I'll add before I hand over to Surjit, is this is an International Year of Millets. One of the very traditional crops which used to dominate our food basket not very long ago, but somehow has been lost in last 50, 60 years. And there's a revival of a sort which is happening both in India as well as in many other countries. And we wanted, there are some sessions, there are some speakers who will be specially talking on millets and its traditions and its various benefits, both from health and environmental point of view. So that is another topic which is core to the theme of this Congress we have here. Sujit.
Thank you. Hello. And before we move into the more academic and intellectual keynote part of this conference, I'd like to tell a small story. It's a story that has stuck in my head. And there's someone in this audience with who I worked on this story many years ago. It's called Pehelwan Kaun, who is the strongest. And it's a story between a peasant farmer and a resident of the forest called Jungle Ka Raja. And कहानी ये है कि जब किसान खेती करने आता है, when the farmer comes to plow his fields, the Raja comes, looks at the fields, keeps quiet till he sees the grain growing, and then he demands his share. राजा को अपना हक चाहिए, अपना हिस्सा चाहिए. So the farmer says, this is really bad. हमने तो इतना सारा काम किया. What happened? So he had to kind of hand over most of the grain. Even though he tried to negotiate कि let me cut what I can in the day, you are so much stronger than me, आप तो पूरा कर दोगे, whatever. So the next year when he tries to plant, and this brings me to the really interesting part of the story. The farmer does not grow what he grew the last time. He grows a crop which grows below the ground. So when the Jungle Ka Raja comes this time, he harvests all that's above. And the farmer has a ball because he's got all the crop. And that's what to me actually encapsulates the resilience of the farmer. They think on their feet, they know the land, they know the ecology, they know the plants they work with. And on that note, I'd like to ask Vijay to invite our first keynote of the evening.
Our first keynote speaker is Professor Anil K. Gupta. Professor Gupta was, we were hoping that he'll be here, but he had to travel internationally. He's joining from us from Bogota, and he'll be, incidentally, I have worked with Professor Anil Gupta in the start of my career. So Surjit wanted me to introduce him better. So Professor Gupta is founder and of an initiative called the Honeybee Network, which essentially, it has multiple institutions in it. But as Honeybee Network is essentially about documentation, celebration of traditional knowledge systems and innovation, grassroots innovations. Many of those innovations are by the farmer and for the farmer. In this journey of last more than 25 years of Srishti, Gyan, and the many other sister organizations of Honeybee Network, they have documented, they have organized what is known as the Shodh Yatra, or the travel of research, and travel across the entire geography of the country, where hundreds of people walk through one village to another village, starts documenting and meet grassroots innovators. This is a journey that Professor Anil Gupta, who was also a professor with the India's premier institution, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, as a management professor there. This is the main driving force of his work over several years. One of the most important aspects was to celebrate traditional knowledge systems, to document them, and to bring it out in the limelight. Many of the innovations have been converted into viable products that are now in market and are being scaled up by different institutions through technology transfer agreements and setting up of micro enterprises of various kinds. Professor Gupta has worked on intellectual property rights, largely of the people, common people, farmers, and traditional practitioners. And he has been a champion of the cause of traditional knowledge systems across the world, across many, many countries. And he's written many books, many papers, and we will be looking forward to hear from him on the journey, on his journey, plus a special message for the delegates here. I'll request if we have Professor Gupta online, then we'll be having him as the first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay, Sujit, and all other dear friends. It is a privilege to be with you today morning and share with you the theme of the conference, which is agriculture as a living tradition. When we started 35 years ago in the Honeybee Network, it was assumed that the intellectual property right or other such instruments which recognize, respect, and reward the creativity and innovation of the people would not be relevant for knowledge-rich, economically poor people. So one of the first departure we made was to suggest that people who are economically poor are not poor in their mind. That's why the subtitle of my book was on grassroots innovation was Mind on the Margin Are Not Marginal Minds. And these marginal minds, so-called marginal minds, could produce innovations which could transcend the limit of prior art in the developed countries like USA. So we filed patents for them in way back in 98, granted in 2003, for people in India who were not even 10th pass, to make a point that it is possible for farmers, artisans, mechanics involved in agriculture, transformation of Indian agriculture and agriculture anywhere else in the world, to produce solutions that will be beyond whatever has been found so far in the prior art, that means in the literature or in the patents or in the market so far, and thus add to our collective wisdom and knowledge system in the world. There were many other departures, and I will share my presentation briefly so that you could also get an idea of some of the ideas better. So the Honeybee Network, the logo of which you see on the screen, there is a nameless, faceless person, comes in contact with the network, gets an identity. This is what Honeybee Network does. It gives voice, visibility, and velocity. Voice, visibility, and velocity to the ideas of knowledge-rich, economically poor people around the world. Recently, in 2019, we started a partnership with UNDP, ECLab Network, 91 labs in 115 countries. And I and my colleague, Dr. Namika, we taught a course called as Management of Inclusive Innovation for Sustainable Transformation, MIST, in 2 cohorts of 60 countries and 31 countries. And one of the lessons that we brought up was that there's a huge scope for cross-pollination of ideas. It is not that Indian farmers would have found solutions to all the problems, obviously not. There is the farmers in Colombia, farmers in Latin America, Africa, various other places could have developed solutions which we might still be looking for. So one of the first purpose of Honeybee Network was to promote cross-pollination. Cross-pollination, as you know, is the heart of sustainability. In any biodiverse system, if there was no cross-pollination, diversity would not be produced and reproduced endlessly over time. But it is not enough for cross-pollination. One of the first principles of Honeybee Network was that when we recognize people, we recognize not only those who solve the problems creatively, but also those who help us to discover them. That means the scout and the innovator, both must be recognized. Both must be respected. Both must be rewarded. This is very important. In a conference of Cima, it is extremely important that we create new standards of acknowledgement, attribution, and reciprocity toward the knowledge of the people. For a long time, the academics, non-profits, corporations, even the government for that matter, representatives of the government, have gone to the people, documented their knowledge, both traditional knowledge and creative solutions, and made them anonymous. Imagine in this conference, if somebody was taking notes of this conference, and this person wrote a paper as an author of all the ideas that conference had discussed, how would we feel? This is exactly what has been happening in the profession of so-called ethno-agriculture, ethnobotany, ethnozoology, or so-called documentation of traditional knowledge around the world. By taking away the rights of creative people, communities, individuals, we have done a great injustice to those who have solved problems creatively and have provided insights about how innovative solutions could be found in future. So therefore, the principle was, it was obvious that we should recognize that this is not a fair exchange of knowledge. In fact, many times people have asked this question, why honeybee? The reason was very simple. Honeybee does what we intellectuals don't do. And I have made a very self-critical confession in this regard that when I realized this in 86, 87, that I was doing what every other exploiter in the world does. Moneylender exploits in the money market, landlord may exploit in the land market, trader may exploit in the commodity market. What was a professor doing? Professor would document the knowledge, write about it, become famous, get consultancies, get on radium. And what part of that income was going back to the people whose knowledge made him popular, made him professionally successful, made him visible, made him distinguished? And this realization that I was no different from others, exploiters in the society, led to the birth of Honeybee Network. That honeybee does what we intellectuals don't do. It cross-pollinates. Flowers don't complain when the bees come and collect the nectar. On the contrary, they attract them with different colors. Are we sure that people don't complain when we document their knowledge? You may like to ask yourself in how many museums on agriculture, innovations or creativity or history have people been attributed appropriately. Anonymity is large in everything that we do. Third principle was that if we document anything, we not only recognize the scout and the innovator, but we also share whatever we do in local language with them. Large number of research papers based on people's knowledge may have never been shared with the people in local language. So they do not know what we do with their knowledge. And that's not fair exchange. That's not ethically correct. The fourth principle was that in case any income is generated, any consultancy is generated, I would include even the per diem of our visit abroad or wherever. Whatever income is generated, a reasonable share of that must go back to the people whose knowledge made it possible. These were the four principles with which we started. And then Srishti was set up in 93. Vijay had worked with us day and night. We developed and expand the scope of knowledge systems, how knowledge systems work, formal and informal, how do we blend them. He also, then in 97, we had a first conference, international conference on creativity and innovation at grassroots, iccig.org. You will find all the last four conferences proceedings there. And Gyan was set up in collaboration with Gujarat government, IMA, Srishti, Honeybee Network. Gujarat Grassroots Innovation Augmentation Network. And the goal of Gyan was to link innovation, investment, enterprise. And I'll come to that a little later. In 2000, it occurred to us, and in 98, in fact, we started a discussion with different secretaries of the government of India about scaling up the experience. By that time, we had about 10,000 innovations and outstanding traditional knowledge practices. And everybody said, do a pilot. I said, we have done a pilot without any money from the government. So why should we not think of scaling it up as a national initiative? And after several efforts, and thanks to the foresight of the people in Ministry of Finance at that time, Dr. E.S. Sarma, Dr. Vijay Kelkar, and at that time, the finance minister recognized the merit of the idea, and he announced in the budget speech of 99 that they will create a national foundation for the purpose, which will blend formal and informal science, which will try to create a leadership of India in the field of sustainable agriculture and other such aspects of knowledge system. National Innovation Foundation was created in 2000. Till 2018, I continued to be working with it as executive vice chair, and then I stepped down, and now I'm only on the board. But this foundation has created benchmarks when it comes to creating standards of acknowledgement, attribution, and reciprocity in the knowledge system. Agriculture, non-agriculture, farm-related diversification. And this then obviously leads to one question, which I think this conference should really address, is, and which I have strongly believed, that a change not monitored is a change not desired. If we are not monitoring how a farm laborer teaches us, his name was Wala, in Jamnagar. We had gone to a farmer who had developed a variety of chili. And we wanted to talk to his laborers because farmers work on one farm for all his or her life. But a laborer works on multiple farms. So the knowledge of agricultural labor is often more enriched than the knowledge of the farmer. And I told this to my friends when we collectively worked on the first conference on Farmer First way back in 87, 88 at Sussex. That yes, farmer first, but now time has come. After some years, I asked this question, why don't we talk about farm labor first or laborer first? So if we don't monitor changes that they bring about, they will remain out of our cognitive process of recognizing the knowledge producers. And therefore, our museum will be bereft of the contributions that the people who work with their hands and may not have any property contribute. Let me give you an example. So we were talking to Bala, we said, okay, when you transplant the seedlings of the chili, what do you do? He said, sir, we transplant them with your left hand, not with the right hand. I said, why would you do that? Because seedlings have very shallow roots. And if we plant them too deep, then the growth would not be good. I said, all right. He said, but the paradox is that because we plant them with the left hand, they are shallow rooted and they're not too deeply in the soil. When we irrigate, the fast irrigation will lodge them. So we give slow irrigation. I had never studied in my agricultural education all my life that irrigation can be fast and irrigation can be slow. And he said, yes, the plot size or subplot size keeps on, when it becomes large, the water spreads slowly. When it is small, the water spreads, it gets filled up quickly and moves slowly, faster, depending upon the way you release the water. And he said, we need to give slow irrigation. This is just one example of how laborers might contribute. I can give you many more examples as we proceed. So therefore, my suggestion is that we should also monitor the creativity and innovation, not just of farmers, but also of laborers. I'm not saying farmers don't innovate. Of course they do. And there are tens of thousands of examples of farmers who have been recognized by the country, by the President of India, who have stayed as a guest of the president at president's house for 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks, at the Festival of Innovation, which was started during President Pranab Mukherjee's time and continued later as Festival of Innovation and Entrepreneurship during Shri Kovindji and current president. So if we recognize the knowledge and creativity of laborers and farmers without ignoring the workers, it is possible that we might do greater justice to the history and to the heritage of a vibrant living system like agriculture. Now, it is also important, agriculture we should see as a crisis that is emerging, and no day passes when in your neighborhood, in Punjab, Western UP, Haryana, and many other developed regions, a crisis of sustainability in agriculture is being raised because water table is going down, soil is being mined of the nutrients, the biodiversity is going down, monoculture has spread, therefore facilitating the diffusion of pests and diseases and weeds. So there is a huge crisis that the cost of agriculture is going up, and the prices obviously cannot be increased every year to the extent that would meet the cost. And therefore, there is a suffering, there is a distress, there is a free riding in the agriculture sector. In my own campus where I taught and have been teaching there still 40 years and odd, the water table was going down by about 12 feet every year. When I joined in 81 there, the water table was around 200 feet. And you can imagine how much water table had gone down. And the tragedy is that as the water table goes down, the quality of water goes down too. That is the way soil and water relationships are. The deeper we go, the water has more minerals, some of which are not desirable and not healthy for our life, for our health, and the health of the human and the soil itself. I want to refer here to one of the study I did, along with about 25 different volunteers from Agriculture University Anand, from medical hospital, civil hospital in Ahmedabad. We took help of doctors, livestock scientists, agriculture scientists. This idea was propagated or articulated in 2009. After many years, we could get the volunteers together. We had no money for doing this research, of linking soil health, crop health, livestock health, and human health. All the 4 systems had to be empirically tested and shown. So what did we do? We did a study. We took help of the health commissioner at that time. Anju was health commissioner in Gujarat, and she got us access to the Anganwadi workers. And we surveyed about 8,000 households about chronic diseases. People, families which had chronic diseases, which did not have. And we selected 2 villages with high chronic diseases and 2 villages with very low chronic diseases. Took the sample of the soil from the fields on which the crop was grown and consumed by the family. Took the sample of the crop's food that was consumed. Took samples of the blood of the animals which consumed the fodder from the same crop field, and persuaded people who agreed to voluntarily contribute after ethical clearance their own blood sample to analyze the minerals in the human blood. And we wanted to see whether declining mineral content of the soil, or in the soils which were healthy and had sufficiently good content of the minerals, whether through the food chain, livestock whose milk we are consuming, and livestock which is consuming fodder from the crop, and the soil from which the crop is mining the nutrients, will there be a chain connecting and giving us a clue about why chronic diseases occur more and less in some places? Interestingly enough, we found a clue. Copper turned out to be one variable which seemed to discriminate better than some other minerals among those who had chronic diseases and those who did not have. Copper, of course, as you know, in our history, has been advocated as one way of storing water, and we all nowadays, many have filters which are lined with copper and so on. How did this clue come about? In the World Food Congress in CFTRI many years ago, I referred to a study in Africa where they found that in some villages, people had more arthritis. And as you know, today, arthritis is almost like an epidemic. And some villages had less. So when scientists analyzed the reason for that, they found that people who are consuming local varieties of maize, and I do not know if former Vice Chancellor of Punjab Agriculture, Dr. Dhillon, is in the hall or not, but he has spent his life in working on maize. The local varieties of maize mobilized 4 times more boron from the soil than hybrid maize. So in the villages where local varieties of maize were consumed, the incidence of arthritis, in which case boron is one of the variables which influences the pathways for this problem. The deficiency of boron was not there, and in the villages where hybrid maize was consumed, it was much more. So it occurred that why not we study this issue? And there have not been too many studies. There was one study in Andhra Pradesh, Dr. Reddy and his group had done, which had tried to look at the mineral contribution up to the in the paddy field. But soil health, crop health, animal health, and human health have not been systematically linked into many studies. In fact, as some of you might know, that the first mineral which became deficient after Green Revolution was zinc. And Zavit was the first tablet supplement which was introduced in our food and nutrition dynamics because of the deficiency of the zinc, which had become apparent after the intensive agriculture that became possible thanks to the Green Revolution at the time. And with due respect that we pay a tribute to Dr. Swaminathan, who passed away recently, who, of course, at that time was instrumental in bringing about this change, but later recognized the need for sustainability and therefore soil health. We all know that soil carbon, for example, is less than 0.5, whereas at least it should be 2% in most soils for sustainability. So what I'm trying to say is that studies after studies have shown that those communities which knew about sustainability in the long term recognized the fact that soil should be healthy, there should be agrobiodiversity, that if we do not keep the soil as healthy system, then the crop and the animal and the human will not be healthy. But this concern has become very weak over a period of time. There are few times when the livestock scientists, the human medical doctors, and the soil scientists and the crop scientists will sit together and look at how we can gain new insights about the sustainability in agriculture and in related affiliated diversified field. Let me go to the next point that Honeybee Network has tried to pursue, and which is about this is about another example where studies have shown around the world that the vitamin C in spinach in 1950 to 1994 had come down per 100 gram to almost 13 milligram microgram compared to 150. So this has been studies all over the world that studies have been done which have shown this. Now, what do we do in such a situation? A leader in knowledge economy has higher upload ratio to download. Today, we all download a lot of content and upload less. This conference provides a context for reinforcing this reminder that we need to have very diversified studies uploaded for both virtual connection to the global minds and also, of course, physically. You should have put this knowledge in your own collection or in your museums and wherever you wish to do. But at the same time, the virtual collection of this knowledge is a fundamental need. Those communities, those societies, those sectors, those disciplines which have to lead the world in knowledge economy have to have a very high share of, have to have a very great content of sharing open knowledge. So Honeybee Network has put a lot of emphasis on database development. multimedia, multi-language database was one of the databases that we tried in 1997. And the purpose was at Global Knowledge Conference we shared in Toronto. And we said that, look, people-to-people learning requires local languages. And people should learn and to be able to overcome three barriers: language, literacy, and localism. I should learn in my mother tongue. I should learn even if I'm illiterate. And I should learn also in not from local knowledge, but also global knowledge. So one of the key purpose of conference like Cima is to ensure that sustainable practices that farmers have developed over a period of time, and I'll give a few examples, trying to keep my presentation short. These examples need to be part of a global pool of knowledge so that all of us get inspired by the creative solutions that people have evolved over the last several millennia and continue to evolve. It's a dynamic knowledge system. It is not, traditional knowledge is not a fossilized knowledge system where knowledge was produced at one time and it carried forward by subsequent generation without applying their mind. This is not a fair way of interpreting the knowledge system of our societies, any part of the world. The weather has changed, the soil has changed, the infrastructure has changed. Suddenly a road has come up which has become like a dam because no culvert is provided. Therefore, the water is not passing through. Now it's as water is getting stored in a field which was earlier getting drained because of passage of the water to the lower side. Now road has blocked it. And new ecological, agroecological condition has emerged in which new solutions will have to be found, or new ways of coping with this new crisis has to be found. So there are a large number of such changes which keep on taking place thanks to urbanization, industrialization, and other inevitable activities in our growth and development process, which change the macro environment, and therefore we change the way we cope with that environment and develop new solutions. In most places, people try to cope with this stress through creativity and innovation. How do we share them? So we realized that we must have large number of databases of weeds, edible weeds and non-edible weeds. And though the language of weed says that a plant which is out of its place, but there is nothing in nature which is out of place. So companion plant would be a more better term. Many people use this term to suggest that plant which grow along with the main crop that you are trying to harvest in the field. But for the sake of convenience, let me continue to use the word weed. And there are a large number of weeds which are edible, bathua in wheat crop and many others, which are also nutritionally very useful. So once we were talking and we had to show the yatra. I have walked in every part of the country from Andaman to Gorej Valley and all the states of the country, more than once in many places, along with the volunteers of Honeybee Network. We call them Show the Yatra, learning walk. And these walks, in summer we go to hot places, in winter we go to cold places. In autumn, I take my students to Himalaya, so 3 times in a year. And the reason is very obvious that when you go to, for example, last 49th Shodh Yatra we had in Balia and Ghazipur, then some of you might have read about 200 people were affected by the heat stroke and they died at that time. And there was a crisis at that time because the temperature was very high. So we said, all right, we will continue to walk and understand. Start early in the morning, then take rest in the afternoon, and then start again in the evening and continue in the late evening and night. And we realized during this walk, as in many other walks, that there are things that people are struggling with. For instance, I want to refer to a walk we had in Kutch many years ago. And I was explaining about why we should avoid the use of chemical pesticides and try to use herbal pesticide or agronomic means of pest control, etc., etc. And one mama said, Prasad, we understood. I said, what did you understand? We understood that all plants which animals don't eat, all those plants which animals don't eat are source of potential pesticide. I took half an hour to talk about sustainability and to talk about how there are plants which have been used by farmers for pest control. And this farmer had a wisdom who summarized it in one line saying that plant which animal don't eat, why don't animals eat? Because they are bitter. And what do we need for pest control? Bitterness. So why can't I create my own pesticide? This insight way back early 90s was a very powerful heuristic. This is applicable globally. Any part of the world, you will find plants which are non-edible and which may have toxicity. And these plants could, extract of these plants with due care about residual effect and so on, could be used as one means of plant protection. So the knowledge system must be shared so that those farmers and the laborers who have not discovered this insight may learn from it and invigorate their knowledge system in their own way. Incidentally, all of you would agree with me that if you have observed spraying, a laborer or a farmer spraying pesticide, I have not met a single farmer who uses safety gear. Nowhere in the country, nowhere, not one farmer. And obviously, this should raise a question that who is affected most? Like generally, the laborers will be affected most by the pesticide that falls on their body. So if we move towards sustainable agriculture, non-chemical intensive or non-chemical pesticide intensive agriculture, we're also doing a favor to the health of the workers and the farmers. You know, there is a cancer train in Punjab. People have been suffering from the consequences of unbridled use of chemical pesticides. So surely there are practices which farmers themselves in many places and the laborers have been evolving, which need to be diffused, which need to be shared through the global databases in as many languages of the world as possible. And now translate function has come, so it makes it possible to access practically any database. And this database, if it also has illustrations, so if you go to hbnkind.gyan.org or honeybee.org, you will find databases of medicinal plants, you will find databases of published practices, you will find databases of common property resource institutions, you will find databases even of the student projects and so on. And the latest database that we made, just to share with you all that why creating knowledge public good is so fundamental to sustainability discourse. Two of my students, Zaigam Khan and Devika Kaushal, passed out and took my course on intellectual property right. And then she said, look, we have some time on weekends, tell us a challenge. So I said, I wrote a paper in 1993 on opportunity in expired patent, but didn't do anything. Can you do something? And he said, what do you want us to do? Can you download the abundant patents? So they built a database, which is available at gyan.org, GIAN.org website. They built a database of 1 million abundant patents. 1 million patents abundant in USPTO, United States Patent and Trademark Office, which are now available for use by anybody, anywhere. Just an example, similarly, techpedia.in, which has a database of 200,000 engineering projects done by 550,000 students. All this is in public domain. All this is accessible without password. All this is a contribution to the knowledge public good by the Honeybee Network, because we want our students not to do what has been done before. How would they know what has been done before? The student projects are very seldom published, particularly undergraduate projects. Why not create a database of them? So I would say that the Cima conference should highlight the role of open access databases of knowledge, multi-language, if possible, multimedia, though it's very costly. But if such databases will help in creating cross-pollination and boost the cause of sustainability, where everybody is looking for sustainable solution. I always say there is no north in sustainability. There is only south. Even a developed country is still a developing country when it comes to solutions for sustainability. So there is no north. There are no developed countries in sustainable agriculture. They're all developing countries. All of them, no matter whether it's US, Europe, or anywhere else. So if there is such a wide need for learning about sustainable outcome, why wouldn't we find ways of doing that? This is one study which my colleague Anamika published in her thesis, when we used the studies data for about 40 years, every 10th year. So she used the data for 30 years. And this brings me to another aspect. The sustainability requires longitudinal studies. So we looked at the biodiversity, the agrobiodiversity in some villages of eastern India, in Faizabad, Kumarganj area. And we looked at plot by plot diversity. So if you see the map, we mapped the varieties of each plot and monitored it every 10th year, same way, so that we could see how agroecological variations at small distance, just a few 50 feet or 100 feet apart, changes the agroecological environment because of elevation changes and the distribution of the soil. As you know, the soil particles move as per the physical basic principles of physics. The upland will be sandy, the medium land will be silty, and then the bottom land will be clay because the smallest particle moves the farthest. And that's how the clay gets deposited in the bottom of the lowlands or the ponds. And soil, which has been, the fields which have been encroached by using the pond land, would obviously have low-lying heavy soil, and there the water will stand for longer period. So the variation in micro level variation in agroecological conditions generate microenvironments, which generate requirement for adapting different crops for those microenvironments, and thus create incentive for maintaining agrobiodiversity. But over the years, it has come down. And by 93, 94, starting from 88, 89, and next year we will do the 40th year survey. The biodiversity has diminished drastically. All of you know that. The question is, how do we help our communities, our people, our children to know what it meant to preserve those varieties which were providing a good answer for agroecological conditions? And how do we create incentives for them? So it's very interesting that the market, all of us as a consumer, who do not contribute to maintenance of agrobiodiversity, you go to a vegetable shop and look at how many kinds of tomato, how many kinds of brinjal, how many kinds of lady's finger or cauliflower is there. Look at a shop, same condition. Look at a cart, even less variability. Now, what does it imply? It implies that the current level of current kinds of logistics provide no incentive for a shopkeeper or vendor or a cart to keep multiple kinds of peppers, multiple kinds of carrots, multiple kinds of ginger, and so on. Is it possible, therefore, by using modern technologies, we display 15 kinds of tomatoes, 10 kinds of potatoes, and then people will log on that application? I need 500 grams of this, 1 kg of that, 200 grams of that. And the back end, somebody will put all those things together and give you a packet with all diverse. So you would not have one crate full of one kind of carrot or one kind of beans, but you will have sockets, maybe 15 kinds of carrots being displayed in a carrot, and then you will have, each one of them is numbered, and you can prefer the ones that you want. You want black ones, you want dark red ones, you want yellowish one, and you can then select those numbers, quantities, and they will be put together by the logistics team in the back end and provide you the solution. So it is not impossible that consumers, by creating their demand as an incentive for growers to conserve biodiversity, contribute to this cause. Such tells are yet to be invented, but I'm sure this conference will discuss operational ways in which we can connect the consumer preference with the producer's concerns and constraints, and thereby fulfill the goal of sustainability. Let me give you another example. This I have already discussed. I would like to mention one example of flaxseed. My favorite example. Flaxseed used to be consumed by horses. 100 rupees a quintal was the price. Now it almost 100 rupees, 100 grams. No other change. Same flaxseed, alsi ka beej. Why? Because scientists could find that it has high 3-omega fatty acid, 3 and to some extent 6. And those who are vegetarians are suffering from the deficiency of this and can get by consuming alsi. So most of you today on your table will have a bottle of alsi, either roasted or otherwise, which you will use to supplement your functional food. Not anything else, but just science and technology made it possible for increasing the value of a crop from 100 rupees a quintal to 100 rupees for 100 grams, more or less. Now, this is possible. Put to the buckwheat. Many of us, and majority of us must have eaten it during the fast. Do you know where does it get exported to most? Japan imports the maximum buckwheat from our country. Extremely rich in nutrition. In fact, all the food that we consume in fast are, truly speaking, fast nutritional foods. They are not fast food like your Maggies and other, but they are very rich food. so that even by consuming some of them in the fasting period, we get our nutritional requirements and can continue to work at optimal level of performance despite fasting, despite not taking our food. So there is a lot of traditional knowledge as well in these crops which has been neglected. I want to come to the last part of my conversation about how do we create markets for the knowledge that our society has, and thus increase the partnership between consumers and producers. So recently during Balia and Gazipur Shodh Yatra, we took the corn silk. जब भुट्टे को छीलते हैं तो you get that fiber. Every seed actually has a stigma, style, and these eventually become brown when they are fertilized. They are otherwise green in the beginning. So most farmers, when they will use corn, they will use the cob, they will throw away the corn silk. I'm sure 99% of the people sitting in this conference and auditorium might have done the same thing. When they consumed cob, either roasted or boiled, they would have thrown away the silk along with the sheath. But do you know? And if those of you who are interested to find out, just do a search on your web and find out the uses of corn silk, and you will notice that it has very high antioxidants and very good for people at my age because it can be useful for prostate, among other things. So I take tea of corn silk in the morning. Very good. Even for those women who are affected by UTI, will find it very good. The point I'm trying to drive home is that abundant resources boost the circular economy by finding new use. Even the tassel of corn is very useful. So question is, those resources which are going waste today can become source of nutrition and income and medicines, phytomedicines, and generate higher income for the farmers, better use of the biomaterials, and at the same time, it could also be useful for the economy and improve our health, improve our well-being. So abundant resources, those plants, for example, in Himachal Pradesh, curry patta grows like a wild plant along the water courses all over in Kangra Valley and many other places. Recently, we were in, we had a Shodh Yatra with our students, and we walked from McLeodganj to Palanpur, and you will find this growing abundantly. India could be a global leader in curry patta powder, and it is very good source of vitamin A and many other nutrients. Hardly any plant exists in Himachal Pradesh which dries these leaves and powder them. That's all what is required. But this knowledge is not available to large number of communities, because of which the local enterprises are not being developed. So I would say that it is time for elevating the goal of conference of this kind, that we provide ideas for entrepreneurship to young people when they come to visit a museum of this kind, either virtually or physically. And they must go back with a insight, with a challenge, with a trigger to set up enterprises, decentralized, as Gandhi always argued for decentralized economy, decentralized distributed enterprises, and through in situ value addition. We have very little in situ value addition in agriculture sector. In situ value addition, wherever it occurs, there only we add value, not transport it 1,000 miles away and then add value somewhere else and create pollution there and do other things. Whereas here we can use every bio waste productively. So I would stop here and try to summarize what I have said so far. And my contention is that there is a very vibrant knowledge system in every country where agriculture has been a mainstay of food security and livelihood. But there are new opportunities arising for building linkages between agriculture, industry, craft, labor, service economy. Agrotourism is, of course, one of the very popular ways in which people are now turning towards. Vijay has set up a account, which I know helps me provide when I buy my provisions from the distribution point in Madurai. I get pulses, I get food, palm, jaggery, and many other things delivered to my home thanks to the new delivery system, logistical chain, value chain that have been developed by the entrepreneurs like him. So I would say that it will be wonderful if we could link these museums as living museum. We create sanctuary, just like there is a wildlife sanctuary. We have not created the concept of agriculture, agrobiodiversity sanctuaries. Wherever there are large number of varieties of fruit trees or crops or flowers, we try to create some incentives for those communities which are conserving this diversity. Plant protection of plant variety and farmers' right authority, PPPFRA, does provide genome savior awards to the community which conserve, but it's a very small scale effort. Few communities every year, that is all. But we can do much more. There are thousands of such communities which require to be recognized everywhere in the country, in all agroecological regions. So Cima must try to link the physical or the structural museum with the living museum and try to create new kinds of lived experience to living experience for our young generation, so that they can understand how evolution of this knowledge system has taken place over the millennia, and how science and technology can help add value to this knowledge to make it go even further. I can also mention that large number of efforts to develop bioplastics. We all know the damage that plastic has done to our health and our environment, microplastics particularly. There's a huge demand for bioplastic, and how can starch in different forms, in different sources, can be polymerized and converted into bioplastic, thereby generating various kinds of biodegradable containers and uses. We have to change our practices also. Consumers have to change their practices also for buying and storing and transporting goods in a sustainable manner. But if future will find answers for sustainability, for substitutes of highly polluting substances like plastic, then it will be agriculture which will provide the solution. So agriculture is not a residual sector. It is not something where young people don't want to go today. But thanks to the conference like yours and the Cima conference, we will be able to generate enough interest among young people to develop entrepreneurship, to identify the entrepreneurship potential of agrobiodiversity, of regions which constrain the income levels of people. I have argued that regions of high biodiversity were also regions of high poverty, because the consumer, for the reason I explained, that consumers were not giving incentives for people who had biodiverse products. The markets were not giving incentives, except for wine and to some extent cheese, where the diverse qualities, hundreds of kinds of wine and hundreds of kinds of cheese and a little bit of honey, there are very few products for which market has created incentives for biodiverse products. But time has come for changing this pattern. The logistics team, the people who are in the field of modifying consumer behavior, and people who want to conserve diversity will have to work together about a transformation. And I hope that multimedia, multi-language databases of the content of this knowledge system that people have produced will inspire younger generation to look more deeply this knowledge that is getting fast eroded. Please remember, the knowledge lost from grandparent to grandchildren is highest in our generation. Never before the distance between grandparents and grandchildren was so high as it is in the current generation. So we are witnessing a very silent revolution of erosion of knowledge along with the erosion of biodiversity. And we are not conscious of this. So Cima has a very important role to play, to just like we create dam to store water, we have to create dams like Cima is trying to do to stem the erosion of knowledge, which is taking place very fast. And once the knowledge is lost, it cannot be recovered. Grandparents, whenever the older generation dies, that day a library is buried or cremated. And therefore, documenting that knowledge is extremely important. With new science and technological tools and techniques becoming available, who knows that we might add value to even more sources than we have done ever in the past, and thereby generate opportunities for people even in the otherwise economically depressed regions. So friends, I'm very grateful for giving me this opportunity to share with you a brief snapshot of a 35 years journey for Honeybee Network. We are very keen to support efforts by, as I told you, all our databases are open access. Please use them. The database on medicinal plant, for example, and some of the published practices in 4 languages, Tamil, English, Gujarati, and Hindi. We couldn't do in all languages, but with your cooperation and support, please take this, use this knowledge, translate it in your languages around the world, and disseminate among the people. You don't need our permission to do that. It's all open. It's all what we received as a generous gift from our people and our communities is being passed on to our friends, younger friends, so that they can use this knowledge system. And Sashti, Gyan, and of course, I would say I cannot represent them, but I can say on their behalf that National Innovation Foundation also, I'm sure, would support these efforts and give a kind of instrument in our hand of sharing this knowledge openly so that the voice, visibility, and velocity is added to the knowledge system that people have produced. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Gupta. Thank you for your time. And we hope if you have time, then please do watch the proceedings for our next few days. Thank you so much.
Can I leave because it is middle of the night in Bogota? And I would seek a permission because I have a class in the morning at 8 o'clock and I'll have to get up at 3 o'clock to prepare for it. So if you wish, if you permit me, then I will take leave.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And good night. Our next keynote speaker of the day is Dr. Devendra Sharma. I'll request Dr. Devendra Sharma to please to come. Dr. Devendra Sharma is a distinguished food and trade analyst and has been an award-winning journalist, writer, thinker, and researcher. As I don't many times in conversation doesn't usually come out, but he's also a trained scientist in genetics and plant breeding. So it's a very I had a honor of having been in touch with him for last many years now, and I think most of his work that is being recognized in writing is about the voices that he brings out of people who I believe do not have representative voices in our mainstream media as well as in our policy discourse. And Dr. Devendra Sharma has been doing that consistently for many years now, and has become the voice of rationale in terms of analyzing the complex understanding of trade and policy in the simple language of impact on the farmers and farm economy. We had requested Dr. Sharma to reflect on considering the topic of our conference, which is linked to history and heritage on agriculture. We had requested him to kind of come up with something that makes us understand over time how agricultural policies, agricultural trade has impacted the culture of agriculture, which is something which is for a country like India and many countries where agriculture remains the predominant industry as well as a way of life. It is very important that we understand a high level or macro level perspective of how things shape when it comes of policies, because food is a very important element of our lives, but sometimes we forget who grows that food. And I have seen Dr. Sharma taking up the voices of the farmers in the strongest way possible at all forums that are possibly to be seen. Dr. Sharma.
Thank you, Vijay. It is very rare that you get to hear good words about what you are doing. Today, the moment you tweet, you are often, receiving a lot of troll, and some go up to the extent of even remarking on something which I thought was very crucial for the nation to understand and appreciate. When I tweet that 2 farmers have died today in Punjab or 4 farmers have died today in Andhra Pradesh, the backlash I get is, why are you talking about them? They should, in any case, they should have died. They are a burden on the country. This is a response that is coming from the educated people. Obviously, they are not communicating with me on in Hindi on the Twitter. So the point here is what is happening, that we think that the farmer, once the pride of the nation, has become a burden on the nation today. Now, I think we will try in the next half an hour to at least go around and see, when we talk very proudly of the importance of agriculture. And as the great M.S. Randhawa used to say that Punjab's agriculture or Punjab's culture is basically agriculture. And I think that was the first time that we started thinking or viewing agriculture from that perspective. When I landed yesterday at this university, and not my first time, and I hope Professor Khosla is listening, the kind of warmth that you see around walking around in this campus. And then, of course, in the morning also, when I come here and see the younger student in large numbers participating. So all I can say is कि मुझे तो कुछ होता है. And when I say kuch hota hai, I'm not talking about Shah Rukh Khan kind of kuch, but I think you feel like that this is a place where you should be, and you should be spending more time, learning or, trying to be researching on the issues that grapple the country. So I hope one day I take up, if at all, I get an invitation to be at the wonderful cottages that I understand, have erected. So anyway, that having said all that, let's now see what is happening all over the world. Last few days, we had the reports of Hamas bombing Israel. And we also know that the Israelis were celebrating a 7-day festival. And that festival actually was a harvest festival. So whether you are in India or in Israel or anywhere in the world, the culture still is being maintained, coming from agriculture. And that, of course, tells us very clearly that everywhere in India, of course, we can go on. Every state in this country has festivals which are drawn on the harvest festivals. And that still continues. Whether we are in Punjab or Haryana or Himachal, the northwestern parts of the country, we celebrate the Baisakhi, we celebrate Lodi. In the southern parts, it is either Onam or Pongal, and so on. And the eastern, it is the Bihu in Assam and so on. So all these festivals are of course, based on the harvest festivals. And basically people trying to celebrate this festival, hoping that the next cropping season is going to be very productive and also going to be economically, I would say, viable. But that is where I think the issue is struck. All over these centuries, if you have seen the work of the speakers or researchers in the previous centuries also, you find they're all talking very proudly of agriculture. Now, of course, we all talk of agriculture, as we just heard also, and there are various aspects of agriculture which we need to focus on, which we need to strengthen, which we need to ensure that agriculture becomes resilient, especially at the time of a climate change. But all over the world, why is it that everyone, when some technology comes in, some machine comes in, or whatever you want to bring in for agriculture, is always telling us that the farmer's income will go up? But unfortunately, the income is not going up. Every product that comes into the market promises that, with this technology, with this new variety, with this new machine, or whatever, or this chemical and so on, the agriculture income will increase. But at least if I look at the global statistics of the global picture and also the national picture, agriculture income is on a steep decline. Agriculture is in distress all over the world, not only in India. Agriculture is in distress in all over the world. So why is it that when we talk of, or when we promise that, all these technologies are going to boost the farmer's income is actually on the decline? I think that's a question which has been left unanswered. And wherever I go, I find everyone is talking about, and very rightly so, that there's so much of biodiversity, so much need to really bring in the traditional knowledge, document traditional knowledge, and so on and so forth. Yes, it is all there. It is all important to follow that particular aspect and direction. But eventually, everything should end up with income of the farmers going up. But it is not happening. Let's look at it. Why, when we talk of culture and agriculture, the missing dimension is, let's come to that, and then focus on what we can see and how we can see that the farmers' livelihood improves, or farmers, at least anywhere in the world, gets the living income that they are aspiring for. And living income, as you know, is the basic income that you need to lead a fruitful life. And if that is not available to the farmer, I think all that we are trying to do is maybe good for our careers and our satisfaction, but it doesn't help the farming community at large. Now, when I say this, let me first tell you or make a comparison. In America, which we all believe is one country which is bestowed with a lot of economic profitability in agriculture, the rate of suicide in rural America is 3.5 times the national average. This is in America, where we believe that a lot of money is going into agriculture. Agriculture is very profitable and so on and so forth. And if you look at in India, we know that every year, roughly, that's the official figure, roughly about 12,000 farmers commit suicide in India. Now, given these two places separated by half the world distance, I think it is very clear that whether you are in this part of the world or whether you are in the rich developed countries, agriculture is in a serious case of distress and huge crisis that we see happening everywhere. Now, I think in this particular trend, when we talk of the importance of agriculture in culture, we know that whether before the Indus Valley civilization or after, in various kind of stages in India, agriculture was the major factor or the driving force. We also know that agriculture is the heart of India's culture, and it's also something that derives basically traditions, cultures, dances, music, whatever you can name it, is based on agriculture. All this is okay. But then again, I would like to know why is it? And I hope this conference for the next 2 days or 3 days here and then subsequently at Ludhiana focuses on how to bring back a farmer back on a position that at least there is a kind of realization that a farmer can stand up and say proudly that he is a farmer. That kind of thing is missing. And if the moment you say, you get to know that somebody is a farmer, you have a mental somewhere, a kind of a block which treats him as a second-class citizen or somebody who's not worthy of sitting along with us. That's the kind of situation that I would like to change, or maybe I will hope that it changes over the years, but it hasn't. It hasn't. The more we talk about it, the more we try to see that agriculture is further marginalized, if I were to use the word. Now let's look into the economic situation and why is it that agriculture, despite all the promises that we make, hasn't been able to make the dent where it was supposed to be. The question here is very clear, and I just give you an illustration from Punjab. Punjab, as you know, is the citadel of green revolution in India. And Punjab is also a place which has the highest productivity, at least that we know of the cropping pattern, wheat and rice in the globe. In the world, I'm talking about 11 tons per hectare. That's the kind of productivity Punjab has. So all the kind of inputs and your technologies have boosted that particular production that we were anticipating to come from Punjab. And Punjab, as you know, is also the food bowl of the country. But why is it that Punjab has also become a hotspot for farmer suicides? Between 2000 and 2015, 15 years, a study done by a house-to-house survey done by the Punjab Agriculture University at Ludhiana, Punjabi University Patiala, and the Guru Nanak Dev University in Amritsar, the three public sector universities in Punjab, have shown that the suicide death toll in that particular period was 16,600 farmers dying. This is happening in a state which is considered to be the most prosperous, quote unquote, as far as agriculture is concerned, and also is a state where we, as I said earlier, it has one of the highest productivity levels that the world has achieved. And yet there is a huge crisis when I look into the farmers' livelihood in Punjab. So there is something which is missing. I'm sure you will all agree. How can it be that the state which is producing so much or so high as far as agriculture is concerned, and then has to be faced with a kind of a suicide trap that it is already in? So I think this tells you very clearly that there is a missing dimension, perhaps that we don't want to touch or we don't want to see. or perhaps we feel that it is something that will eventually be taken care of by more people quitting agriculture and joining the mainstream or coming to these cities. That's what I remember a former governor of Reserve Bank of India used to say, that the biggest reform in India would be when we are able to take out people from farming and bring them to the cities, because cities need cheap labor. But that kind of economic thinking actually has to change. This has been built onto us, and this is part of the economic design the world follows. We believe that people have to be moved out. If we have to economically grow, people have to be moved out of the villages and into the cities. This is a common belief. Look at America. When Richard Nixon was the president in 1970s, the 15% population was involved with agriculture. Today, in 2020 or 2023, hardly 1.5% of the population now remains in agriculture in America. But that's the kind of a model we want the rest of the world to follow. I remember a study by UK Food Group some years back, which said every minute one farmer quits agriculture in Europe. Now, this is what is happening in that part of the world. We also believe in India that the only way forward for us is also to follow the same kind of a pattern, which means push people out of agriculture into the cities, because cities need cheap labor. In other words, what we are trying to say is that the Dihadi Mazdoor, daily wage worker, is what our idea of employment generation is. I think this has to change. This has to change because the educated in this country or elsewhere do not or feel shy of standing with the farming populations, and feel shy of articulating their concerns that after all, what they need is, or what they're calling for is, a living income. But what happens is the kind of jargons or the kinds of dominant economic thinking patterns, if you see, actually makes us think that this may be the way forward. Let me illustrate a couple of things. Today, we say that, farmer will not be able to progress if he doesn't go in for value addition. I agree with that. Most of you, I'm sure, are talking about this. Many studies, if you go to business schools, will be on value chains and so on. But I have been to a number of business schools and seen the reports that they try to show me about the value chains on one particular crop or the other particular crop. And invariably, I find they do tell us what is the share of transporter, what is the share of retailer, what is the share of packaging person, and so on and so forth. But the farmer share is missing. So when I asked them, sir, what is about farmer share in this? Oh, we forgot about it. It's so easy to forget, when it comes to farmer share. But then if you look into it broadly, you will get to know that it is a deliberate attempt to see that, we don't even talk about the I wouldn't say shameful, the share that the farmers get, from in the value chains. Now, let us take coffee, for example. Coffee is a $200 billion industry. Coffee doesn't have APMC. Coffee doesn't have minimum support price. Coffee has commodity trading. It has all the new world approaches to see that the value chain progresses in a strong manner. The coffee chain, the people who grow coffee beans are mainly in Latin America or in Africa, Western Africa. They get not even a fraction of what you pay for the cup of coffee. Recently in South India, in Karnataka, I happened to address the coffee growers of India, and they were telling me that I should talk about writing off their loans, outstanding loans. I said, but I thought coffee growers were better off among all the farming communities, or cereal growers and vegetable growers and so on and so forth. They said, no, we have a outstanding loan of 8,000 crores, which we would like the government to write it off. But I said, why is it though? I thought the value chain is working perfectly well for coffee. If I look at the coffee chain, after all, when I go to Barista or I go to Starbucks, I buy a cup of coffee for 300 rupees. I think that's the best value chain, or that kind of processing that would have taken place. So why is it that farmers are suffering that kind of a loss? Well, they said, okay, we will try to get to the real figures as to how much a farmer gets when you pay 300 rupees for a cup of coffee. Next morning, they came to me and they had done the arithmetic. They said, out of the 300 rupees that you pay for a cup of coffee, and I'm sure the youngsters are listening here, the farmer gets only 1 rupee. Now, when you look at the value chain, we are all very proud. Oh, look at it, coffee has done remarkably well, and so on and so forth. But eventually, the farmer is earning nothing out of it. 1 rupee per cup of coffee. So that tells you how the value chains are derived at. And then I remember one of the American universities started working on coffee and livelihoods and so on. And they tried to raise a kind of a ruckus. It didn't work. So they eventually went to the better known economist, Jeffrey Sachs. And Jeffrey Sachs got convinced about this and he also started talking about it. Because of his influence, he was able to raise 10 billion dollars as the fund for helping the farmers. And I used to say at that time, $200 billion industry, only 10 billion, which is not even 1% of the total, outstanding profits that the companies have made from this kind of a value chain that we are talking about. It doesn't end with coffee. You can see what happens in the case of chocolate. And why chocolate? Just think about bananas. I have never understood why bananas are still priced at the price that I used to buy when I was a young student. 40, 50 rupees, that's the price for bananas a dozen. All over the world, if you look at it, America and Europe is the cheapest fruit. And yet, when I look into studies of value chain, I realize in Canada, in North America, and in Europe, much of it is being imported from the Caribbean countries and so on. And there also, the share of farmer in the end consumer price is just 5%. Now, this tells you very clearly that the economic change that we are being made to believe that is going to be the answer to the kind of crisis that agriculture is undergoing is again not the right kind of solution. Now, what is the right kind of solution? I think if we really want to sustain that cultural upbringing, I think we will look into it finally. But let's before that try to see what else is happening in global agriculture that gives you a feeling that despite all these kinds of not only encouragements, but the process of growth and so on, agriculture is not only creating a problem for itself, but agriculture also is creating a huge environmental crisis that the world is faced with. From an era of green revolution, we are now heading into a stage. I thought, as Professor Swaminathan would say, we should move into evergreen revolution, but we are entering into a phase when we would like to see, or we would be forced to see, that agriculture, the farmers disappear from the scene. And that has begun to already happen. That has begun to happen already in the Western countries. And we see that not only Holland, which has asked 3,000 farmers to go, but England also is under pressure to remove 5,000 farmers. And then, of course, countries like New Zealand, Austria, and so on. So there is a war against farmers globally that we see. On the one hand, we are saying that the farmers become economically viable and so on. That's the kind of discussion going on. On the other hand, if we see the realities are moving in the other direction, we even want the minuscule population that is left to do farming in those countries is also being driven away now in the name of the climate change. So that's another problem that the world is faced with, and somehow we are still not stuck. We have not been able to link the dots that we need to do it here. Because for the question that when we had the protest happening in New Delhi, the iconic farmers protest. If you remember, the banners would say "No farmer, no food." But today, the world is moving to a stage when you don't need farmer to produce food. I think we should start looking at the reality so that we can really go back or look back and see where do we need to make corrective steps or take corrective steps to see that we don't end up in a situation when there are no farmers left. As I said, in America, it's only 1.5% of the population which is left in agriculture. I think you will agree that it is going to be very severe or serious for all of us when we talk of food if those farmers are also gradually moved away. In fact, John Perry, the negotiator, the American negotiator on climate change, has already said that unless we tackle agriculture, we will not be able to tackle the global warming situation. And what he is saying is that roughly 34% of the global greenhouse gases come from agriculture, and there is a need to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions, and that they believe would happen if intensive culture or the people who are engaged in intensive farming systems are pushed out of agriculture, because that's where the greenhouse gases come from. So the point I'm trying to make is, if there are no farmers, the slogan was "No farmers, no food." But here, the planning is that we don't need farmers for growing food. And what is happening in Holland? Holland is now going to base its entire thing on, or food requirement on, the protein that it takes out from the insects. And there are lots of processing units and production units set up for producing insects now. Insects have become the new buzzword. In fact, I saw a application or a kind of a signature campaign going around, because they are also trying to now cultivate octopus. I thought octopus was not an animal or sea animal that should be really worried. We should be worried about, but now because of this focus on shift or focus on protein as the next food, what should I say, strength that the world is looking forward to. So they are looking for all these kinds of sources. The point I'm trying to make is, if you think this is all imaginary or this is still far away, then you should know very well that the world's first food factory has started operating in Finland. And that food factory does not use farmer, does not use land. It's all in the building, and they are taking from the atmosphere or from the air the kind of carbon dioxide they need or the other minerals they need, and then they are crossing with bacteria and producing food for us. And the company has gone on record saying that they will be able to produce about 500 million meals a year. That's the kind of target the company has set. And if you think that may be still far away because Finland is not that close to India, then I think you should know that many startups globally who actually are looking at precision farming or other kinds of things to make artificial food or synthetic food are actually happening in India. And this is not far away. I'm sure we should start looking at what is happening in our own backyard. So gradually, I would see more influence on driving away farmers from agriculture. And when we say that we have to sustain or maintain that kind of the cultural bearings, because after all, as we all know and see that culture has strong traditions with agriculture, I think gradually as we move forward, we are moving into a stage where we will not even have many farmers left to be taken care of. So how do we change that? How does one learns from, as the organizers have told me, how does we learn from the Indian experience or what needs to be done? I think the recent protest that happened in New Delhi, the farmers' protest for 1 year, had very clearly conveyed a message as strong as possible that the new marketing reforms that the country is looking for to bail out agriculture or to pull out agriculture from the kind of crisis that exists today is not going to work. And I'm glad that the government did withdraw the laws. But at the same time, the demand of farmers still remains. And that demand is that we should have a guaranteed price for agriculture produce. And I think that is the way forward. The world now needs to look beyond what we have always been told, that, let the markets operate, let the markets decide the final price. They know what is good or bad. And then also supply demand equation should work out in agriculture and so on and so forth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked anywhere in the world. Even if in America, with all the kinds of market reforms thrown in for last, I would say 100 years, and yet if the income is on a steep decline, it tells us that these reforms are not working. If you could look at Europe, again, it is the steep decline that we encounter in farming that is ensuring that agriculture, is not coming back into a kind of occupation that everyone would like to go back to. But having said that, I think it is very clear that when you compare with India, and that is what the farmers were trying to project, the government of India's own statistics tells us that in 2016, when government promised that they will double the farmers' income in the next 5 years, I was asked a question repeatedly: what is the income of farmers now that you are planning to double in the next 5 years? The government's own economic survey, which is an official document released 2 days prior to the economic budget, had said very clearly that the average income of a farming family in India in 17 states, which would mean roughly half the country, the average income of a farming family in India in 17 states is 20,000 rupees a year. 20,000 rupees a year means 1,700 rupees, less than 1,700 rupees a farming family was surviving in half the country. I can't even rear a cow in 1,700 rupees. If you are in the urban cities or urban centers, you can't even rear a dog in 1,700 rupees. Imagine how these farmers were surviving in half the country with the income which is less than 1,700 rupees. And then we are told, oh, the younger generation doesn't want to be in agriculture. Now, obviously, if my father is earning 2,000 rupees a month, why should I take up the job where my father is earning just 2,000 rupees a month? If we were to give him the right kind of a price or the right kind of income, there would be a kind of a reverse migration that we will see in this country happening. And I think that is where the world needs to look up to India, which when you say the model for resilience, agriculture resilience or farm resilience can come from India, is because you don't have to follow the Western model of pushing people out of agriculture. You have to instead build agriculture, rebuild agriculture, and make it a kind of a economically viable proposition. That's the kind of enterprise we need to build up in this country. And why not? A lot of people believe, no, farmers, if you get a price of 2 rupees per kilo for your tomato, you are very happy. If the farmer throws his tomato on the streets or potato or onion on the streets because he's not getting a price, I've never seen an uproar in this country. But if the moment the prices go up, oh God, hell breaks loose. And I have seen people standing up and saying, look at the inflation, my household budget has gone topsy-turvy and so on and so forth. But when the farmer's budget goes topsy-turvy, we have never had a discussion happening in this country or trying to build up a kind of or looking for a solution which can ensure that, the farming can also become a viable livelihood. Recently in Himachal Pradesh, when the tomato prices shot up, this was the first time that I witnessed that the farmers getting the benefit of that price rise. In Himachal Pradesh and in the district that you come from, Solan, and the close by districts also, there were so many lakhpatis were created because the farmers could get a higher price. So many lakhpatis, some even crorepati happening in this state. I was very happy. A lot of people on television would blame me that, inflation should not increase. I said, why not? After all, these are the people who have always been at that low level or at poverty level or below the poverty level. And if they get a higher income, why are you all up against them? Why shouldn't they get also a higher income? I would like more high net worth individuals coming from agriculture rather than always from the industry or business. Why not? So if the prices go up, and don't tell me people can't pay. If you can pay for a cup of coffee 300 rupees, I'm sure you can pay 200 rupees for a kg of tomato. The point I'm trying to make is, and this kind of thing is only built up as a narrative for the country to digest that, the high price rise or the higher the farmers get the prices, the more difficult it is going to be for the middle class. Now, the middle class is just 30%, if at all, I believe the outer figure, it is 30% of the country's economy. But if you look at the 70% which comes from the rural areas, which includes a large population of farmers, as we know, roughly 50% of the country's population is in farming. So you clearly get to see that why the kind of inequality that we see in India has been increasing at such a huge proportion. After all, if you don't, or if you deny farmers their rightful price or rightful income, the kind of huge income gap obviously is going to increase in the years to come or in the months to come. And it's already at a level, as we know, that the income of 10%, top 10% in this country is equivalent to, or the wealth of 10% of this country is equivalent 4 times the wealth of the 70%. So that tells us clearly of the wide inequality that prevails. And I think the way forward, if we have to bridge that gap between culture and agriculture, would be to see that we make agriculture economically viable and a profitable enterprise. These young farmers are very enterprising, as has been shown in the past, and as we will discuss in the next 2 days. These farmers are very enterprising despite the low so-called intellect, quote unquote, or their low literacy level. I think they have done a remarkable job in sustaining all these traditional varieties, traditional agriculture, and something that we can now back upon. When it comes to millets, for example, millets, as you know, were a forgotten food. And now it became, of course, is in the main line. This year, we are celebrating the millet year. I remember going to Deccan Development Society, one of the places where millets was very strong as an activity for the entire civil society group. This year, when I went to address the biodiversity convention that they have annual, I was very surprised. A millet farmer stood up and she said, "Sir, we are very happy today that we have become rich." I was very, curious to know, how did she say that we have become rich from millets? She said, because the rich have started eating the food that the poor used to eat, we now think that, we have also become rich in the process. Well, I thought that was a very loaded statement, but I think it tells you very clearly that how the poor people perceive your recognition of the kind of food or the staple food they were based on, or their entire society was living on. Now, that clearly tells us that that is not only the kind of backup that we need to provide to the farmers. Millet farming all over the world is being talked about. We know about the virtues, the health impacts, and so on, for the superfoods and other things. But I think nothing much is happening on the ground because as long as the farmer doesn't get the right kind of price to see that his replacement, if he's replacing wheat and paddy with millets that can take place, then it's very clear the farmer is not interested. The farmer is not interested. Again, I come back to the same situation that or problem that I initially posed, that why is it that we want people to be helped out of that kind of a crisis, and yet we are not willing to provide them the right kind of price? Because farmers are not getting the right kind of price for producing millets, I don't see much hope that the millets can become a kind of a new food for this country in the years to come. And we have to focus. We have to go on talking about, going on talking about the virtues that this traditional crop that India has used to have for last so many years, and the farmers' role in preserving that, keeping it alive for all of us. Unless we are able to try to come and stand with the farmer, help him with the kind of economics that he desires or he needs, I don't think we can see another revolution happening in India or elsewhere. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, if I go to ICRISAT will tell me about the millets varieties they have evolved in Africa or in Asia and so on and so forth. But then why is it not picking up as a alternative crop that the farmer should be cultivating if they have to replace the crops which are doing more damage to the environment? Is simply because of economics. I think so. All I'm trying to say is, let us stop romanticizing agriculture in that sense, that all over we have talked about what a wonderful, it is the mainstay of India's economy. We know that it is the heart of India's economy and so on and so forth. That's all very well said. But the reality is, how do you sustain that large population that is living on agriculture? Now, ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, or 3 suggestions before I wind up. The first and foremost is, in a country like India, where the average income of a farming family, what I told you earlier was average income of half the population in the country. And now if you look at the population, the entire population in agriculture, the average that they have worked out is 10,218 rupees per household, which means there are 5 or 6 people in the household, and everyone is not only based in the income coming from agriculture. Somebody is into Manrega work, somebody is opening a shop, and so on and so forth. And if that is 10,000 rupees per month, I think it tells you very clearly where agriculture is and why agriculture is in a distress that we all know it is in, but we don't want to really see through the lines that tells us, what we need to do to bail it out or to take it out from that kind of a crisis. Now, when I say 10,000 rupees, there is also, if you look into the official data and try to decipher it very cleverly or clearly, it tells us that the average income per day from farming alone, I'm not talking of non-farm activities, is only 27 rupees. If your average income from farming is only 27 rupees, please tell me who would like to go back to farming. That's a question I'm sure the conference in the next 2 days would also like to focus on, to see what steps we can take to see that agriculture remains the kind of a strong pillar of the culture that the country has, or the tradition the country lives with. Given that situation, the best way forward is that we must ensure that the minimum support price, India has a tradition of fixing minimum support price or announcing minimum support price, which means a guaranteed price when the government comes and purchases at that price. That's the kind of thing which has been prevalent for a number of years, starting with the Green Revolution years, but except for wheat and rice, and of course, partly for cotton and sugarcane, this has not worked for the rest of the cropping pattern in this country. And we know that only 6% farmers at one stage used to get minimum support price. 94% were dependent on markets to operate. If markets were so helpful, markets were so benevolent, I don't see the reason why agriculture should have been in a deep distress by now in India. Having said that, it is also very clear that when we say that minimum support price has benefited only 2 or 3 crops and not for the rest of the community, knowing the figures of the average income for one part of the world and the average income for the rest of the world, rest of the country, I think it is very clear that the first step that we need to take to see that agriculture becomes economically viable is to ensure that minimum price support becomes a legal mechanism, a legal right. which means nobody in the country, whether it's the private trade or whether it is the organized retail or whether it's the government agencies, nobody is able to buy below that price. I know the halla gulla that will happen, that, oh, the inflation will boom and inflation will be a big problem for the country and so on and so forth. I think, let's be very clear, it didn't work. It didn't happen that way in Spain. Spain in 2020 brought in a law which made it illegal if you were not providing farmers or not covering the cost of production a farmer had incurred, which in some ways means that they were ensuring a minimum support price to be paid to farmers. There was again a simple, or the same kind of a halla gulla happening there, also saying that, oh, the inflation will go up and so on and so forth. Today we are in 2023, the inflation hasn't gone up in Spain. I think it is too much of a hype that we create, so that we create a fear psychosis that what will happen if you start paying the farmers more, that is driving or ensuring that the farmers do not get their due in due time. So I think that is something that we have to get out of that. First factor is, as I said, is to ensure that farmers get a guaranteed price. And believe me, there are farmers all over the world who have been at least in touch with me, who are saying, sir, you have a large population in India, and you can really call the shots now. So if you do it, if you are able to ensure that MSP becomes a legal instrument, believe us, sir, we will also start doing the same in our own countries. We will demand the governments to also go in for a guaranteed income for farmers. And I remember an American farmer asking me, what is this happening in India that so many farmers are protesting outside New Delhi? So when I explained why the farmers are protesting, he says, well, that happens to me also in America. I sold, he said, corn at 3 bushels, $3 per bushel, and bushel, as you know, is 27 kg for corn. And he says, I look into my barn, there is a note hanging there from my father. In 1970s, he sold it for $3.2. And after so many years, I'm selling it for $3. Then his reply was, sir, if you really want to feel or know what hell is, become a farmer. Because all through you are living on a credit, you are indebted, and that is the real hell that anyone can face. And I think we have to take the farmers out of that hell now. And it's not only in India. India can show the way. Rest of the world, I'm sure, would follow. Because agriculture, if you really want to do something for agriculture, you cannot continue to sustain agriculture on the massive subsidies that the rich and developed countries have been providing all these years. And I think you have to take them out, make it a kind of a viable enterprise. And I think that can only happen if we try to ensure that the prices are guaranteed for the farmers. A. B is the biggest challenge in India that the farmers face is lack of markets. And when I say lack of markets, I'm trying to say that, the place where they can go and sell, and there are some buyers there in that market. I'm talking about that kind of a APMC, regulated market structure, that is easily available in Punjab, as we know, is very well laid out in Punjab, with about 1,840 markets already operating very well since the last so many years. This is something that the country has to follow and adopt. Today in this country, we need 42,000 markets, or mandis as we call it, if we want a mandi to be made available for a farmer in 5-kilometer radius. That's the number of mandis we need. Instead of building all these 4-lane and 6-lane highways that the country is mad about, and I'm so glad that Mount Everest is not in India. I'm sure if it would have been in India, we would have built up a 6-lane highway to reach the top also. That is not the kind of investment I suppose that the country is only looking forward to. What we need is investment in creating that market infrastructure for the country. We only have today 7,000, roughly 7,000 mandis in this country. What we need is 42,000 mandis. And I think if we build up that kind of infrastructure, it will deliver. I remember some years back, Swaminathan and I were invited to a summit in Rome. And at that time, President Lula had just taken over in the first term. And we got a message that he would like his food security minister, because he talked about zero hunger, if you recall, in his first tenure. So he said that his food security minister would like to come and have a discussion with us to learn from India. I was really a little bit curious to know what did they want to learn from India. And then when we sat down, we discussed, and eventually Swaminathan and I insisted on him that what you should do is to lay out a network of mandis in Brazil. Brazil did a good job. Brazil did a good job because they laid out a mandi which was available for every 20-kilometer radius. A, B, also they linked up certain other provisions with that sale mechanism that the mandi would be involved with. For instance, anyone in the country could come and sell anything in those mandis, and the government is obliged to buy it. But at the same time, they would also ensure that those who are selling it are sending their children to school, for instance. So that, I think, was a very clever way of building up a kind of a development pathway, linking up the mandis also with the other things that the society needs to focus on. And of course, we all know officially, Brazil is the one large country or one big country which has become zero hunger. And what was still is surprising to me is that they wanted to learn it from us, and we are still having the largest population of hungry in the world. So I think we need to be really clear as to which pathway we are moving. And if we provide a mandi network in this country, as I said, the CACP has been telling us, we would be laying that kind of infrastructure that you require. Third, and the most important is, when we go on to international trade, let's be very careful that India will, whenever it wants to import, it will only import at the price that is higher than what we have in the country today, and we will not import at prices which is lower than that, because importing cheap food is importing unemployment. So the more the cheap food will come into the country, more are the people unemployed. The small farmers are the first to be driven away. And finally, I think, is what many of our colleagues have been talking about, is the switch over to ecosystem services approach. When we go into national accounting, and the national accounting should now switch over to the TEEB mechanism that the UN has developed and performed. And we know many of us, you are very strong on that point. And I think we like to learn more how ecosystem services could be building up the agroecological farming systems in this country, providing an incentive to the farmers for protecting all the ecosystem services the nature provides. I think that is something which we must now try to see that it becomes part of the economic design that we are all aware of, and we also need to shift the focus from the kind of economic growth that we were talking, which benefited only a handful of people. I think it has to be, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi would say, sabka saath, sabka vikas. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. The only way to move into that direction or in that direction is, of course, focusing on agriculture. The route to a growth model that helps A and B and C and everyone around us is to start moving through agriculture. Let us not be ashamed that agriculture is an activity which, of course, will raise the prices for us and so on and so forth. I think there is a lot to be investigated and seen where would the price increase lead us to. But all I'm very hopeful and sure is that at least 70% of the country will now be able to face or get the real freedom that they have been looking for. The real freedom for farmers will only come up when you give them a higher income in their pocket. And believe me, the more the income you provide, it will help up strengthen the industry and business. People believe that no, the prices will go up, it will be detrimental. No, on the contrary, I feel more the farmers have more money in their pocket, I think the business and economy will automatically grow. So it will not be a booster dose for the economy if the farmers are paid a guaranteed price. It will act as a rocket dose for the economy, because all this money is eventually going to come in to the market, and that will mean more demand being created, and that will drive the wheels of development. So ladies and gentlemen, let us hope that in the next 2 days, we are able to focus, besides the brilliant exposition that we have on various aspects of agriculture and culture and so on, but also let's move forward to see how a farmer can be standing with the same kind of pride that you and me stand with. Thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.
uh, it's really
Yeah, there is somebody. Okay, the mic will come around. So any question, just raise your hand and the mic will be there with you.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful presentation. I just had a question. Why is India going into monoculture kind of production instead of multiculture? Because we know Punjab, before the Green Revolution, had this multi-cropping system where crops helped each other. And probably I could imagine from the same size of the land, the nutrition value was much more higher than now on a monocropping system. What would be your comments on this? Thank you.
Well, the answer is very simple. It's the price. See, if you come to Punjab and you want to see why the large part of the state is under wheat and paddy, the cropping pattern they follow, is because on wheat and paddy, they get an assured price. So they know that whatever happens, at least when they get the harvest ready, they will get the price that is announced. Whereas for other crops, there is no mechanism that can provide them with an assured price. For instance, if Punjab wants to, let's say, diversify from paddy to maize, for example, and the maize minimum support price is now, of course, I think it is about 1,900 rupees per quintal. But the point here is that in the markets, farmers would get about 900 rupees, 1,000 rupees, 1,200 rupees, and so on. So why should they take up a crop, which is not economically viable for them? So as long as we go on with only supporting this kind of a assured price mechanism, we will continue to be living in the same kind of a monoculture that you talked about. That is why I've been saying that once the government ensures that MSP becomes a legal enterprise, which means for the 23 crops, the government announces price every year. Only 2 or 3 are the ones which benefit, as I said earlier. But if we were to ensure that every crop gets a legal assurance, then you will see people, the farmers are not foolish. They also are aware that it is environmentally damaging and so on and so forth. So they will automatically shift to the other crops because where they can get an equal amount of money after the harvest. So I think that is the reason why more monocultures are being built. Yeah.
Nowadays. And that is the biggest problem with the farmers today, because the farmers, they are trapped by these middlemen and they are forced to sell their produce at a very, very low price. And they also sell their products, their own products, just like pesticides or fertilizers at premium prices. And farmer, he gets those things without actually on interest. So how can we say that the creation of mandis that will increase the income of the farmer?
Well, if you see the 3 laws that came in, the controversial laws that have been withdrawn in India, they were basically aiming at market reforms in agriculture, which would mean they were also talking about removing the middlemen and letting the big companies come and buy directly from farmers. You know, when the big companies come and buy directly from farmers, actually you have not removed the middlemen. You have only ensured that the smaller middlemen are taken over by the bigger middlemen. It's like the small sharks being taken by the big shark. And if you think that is a system which is workable, that, when we say that middleman is the one which eats away lots of the profit that the farmer should be getting. So when the middleman is not there, you have, let's say, Adani coming in. Adani in Himachal Pradesh is a classic example. When they came in first time, they said they gave a higher price for apple, and then subsequently they reduced the price for apples. That is what the bigger middleman will do. So I think to think that the bigger middleman is going to be the answer for agriculture hasn't delivered anywhere in the world, sir. So if you look at America, America has at one stage in the 70s, they used to have about 6.5 lakh small dairy owners. And those dairy owners with the same kind of, sophisticated technology being used and so on and so forth. Today, 93% of the dairy farms in America actually have closed down.
have closed down because the bigger sharks have appeared on the scene. They produce, earlier they used to have, let's say 10, 12, 15, 20 cows, small dairy farm. But now they have dairy farms which have 34,000 cows and 50,000 cows and so on and so forth, which depresses the prices, as a result of which farmers have no reason to stay back in agriculture or in dairy. So that is what, just one example that tells you that how the bigger fish eats away the smaller fish, and we somehow are made to believe that this is the way forward. Now, the other part, the middleman in India, you can say, yes, more mandis will mean more middlemen, I say. But in the rest of the world, developed countries, we don't have the APMC system. We don't have the APMC system there. But tell me, look at chocolate. Chocolate is one industry which again is $200 billion industry. And there is a study which comes out, which is called Cocoa Barometer, every 2 years, that looks into the cocoa farmers. And that study tells us very clearly that these cocoa farmers, majority of them earn less than what you pay for an average brand of chocolate. The average brand of chocolate that we all buy is roughly, let's say, 100 rupees. And there 50% of the population of cocoa growers is living on less than 100 rupees. And believe me, there are no middlemen there. The way we look at it, there are no middlemen. I have always been saying, if these countries wanted to help the cocoa growers, they should have gone for minimum support price for cocoa growers. Let them at least get that price out of the $200 billion, the Nestle's and so on, reap. We could have given that price easily to the farmers. So the fear that, the middleman, I think should be considered here, because you should see the bigger middleman walking away with the bigger chunk, and we don't question them. Because we are worried, we are worried in this today's world. We don't want to point fingers where you can be taken to task any stage. But the point I'm trying to make is, why don't we stand up and see that the bigger man eats away, the bigger middleman will, of course, take away all the profits. So similarly here in India, the point is that as long as the mandi is further away from the farmer, there is a more reason for distress. You will all agree. As when we bring mandis closer to the farmer, there is a lesser chance of a distress operating. That is what the kind of freedom that the country really needs to build on. And that is what we are trying to suggest. Bring the mandis closer to farmer. To say that farmer can go and sell anywhere in the country, I think that has been a kind of a big statement to make, which is not true in any case. How can you expect farmers from, let's say, Himachal Pradesh to go and sell in Assam, or to go and sell everywhere, that you think of in the country? No, the mandis needs to come closer to the farmers. So all these questions of transport, I know it's very interesting. If you go to a country like Norway, I'm just giving you an example. Norway is a dairy country, and the price realization for farmers there in Norway is 20% of the end consumer price. The price realization for dairy farmers in India is 82% of the end consumer price. India is also a big country. All I'm trying to say is that if we had that kind of a mechanism working where farmers can get 82%, that was maybe exceptional in the case of dairy, but dairy is something which is, perishable in an extent that we can't even keep it for more than a few hours. And yet we have built in kind of a cooperative infrastructure, which ensures that the farmers get 82% of the end consumer price. I would like Norway also with their farmers to get at least 60%, if not 80% of the end consumer price. And then the government, when I ask them why it is not happening, they say, oh, transportation takes quite a chunk of that price. So all these, as if transportation doesn't happen in India. All I'm trying to say is that these kinds of arguments will always be thrown in, but I think we should be very clear as a policy that we have to help farmers to come back or to stand on their legs again.
That's all. Thank you very much for your informative lecture, and I have no words to express my sincere thanks to you. I have no question but curiosity. We have landed on moon through Chandrayaan. We have sent Suryayaan also. But one thing I could not digest or understand. Are there no good advisors with the Prime Minister or with the government to advise that we should give guaranteed prices to the farmers, or at least MSP to the farmers?
Well, I guess there must be a lot of good people also advising the Prime Minister or the government that you should follow this kind of a pattern. But I think more important is the silence on our part. When I say silence on our part, you and me keep quiet. You and me keep quiet. Largely, you go, in any conference or anywhere that you go and see, you'll see this, the faculty and the students quiet about these kinds of issues. They always will go on talking about, oh, we can do, with this technology will do wonders for agriculture and so on and so forth. But eventually, when it comes to income, everyone is quiet. In Punjab, there used to be a saying in Punjabi, as first say in Punjabi, it said, "Dab ke baat raj ke kha." Means the more intensive you undertake cultivation, the higher income you will have. It was a flawed, thinking that was being pushed through. It hasn't worked anywhere in the world. Look at America, look at China. If you think China is doing much better than us, a lot of people say that we should follow that pattern. China is today the second biggest provider of agriculture subsidies in the world. The first is, of course, the OECD. The second is China. Look at the kind of support that they are providing to agriculture. Every American farmer gets us domestic support of $62,000 per year. And every Indian farmer gets a subsidy support or domestic support of $280 per year. It tells you where the world is moving towards. And then we say those farmers are viable. They are viable because of the kind of subsidy support they get. Withdraw that subsidy support and you will see whatever remains in agriculture in those countries would also be collapsing. So I think what we need to do is to reinvent agriculture in India. Let's not be ashamed when we try to see work out a kind of a mechanism that can help agriculture to operate in a profitable manner for all times to come, and then be swayed by the public opinion coming for those countries. That is why I said you and me are responsible, because you and me have not played that part in building up that kind of a public opinion. The more we talk about it, the more we use social media. Now, don't say that the media doesn't talk about it because the media is corporate controlled. Now you have social media in your hand. I don't know how many of you are on Twitter. Can I ask? How many of you are on Twitter? Look at that. It's a fraction of the entire house that we have. The point I'm trying to make is Twitter is not a solution, but all I'm saying is it's at least a platform where you raise your voices and the politically it will be recorded. But the point is that we don't do that, and we believe somebody else should do this job for for the country to really pull out agriculture from the crisis it is in.
Thank you, sir. One last question, then this will be the last question. Thank
सर, मेरा नाम अवधेश शर्मा है और मैं उत्तरांचल से हूँ, आपके पड़ोसी राज्य से हूँ। जहां तक आपने प्रेजेंटेशन किया, बहुत बढ़िया लगा, बहुत अच्छी बातें बताई, हमने समझा। लेकिन जो कोऑपरेटिव की भी बात आई, इसमें मदर डेयरी के साथ हमारा अच्छा अनुभव नहीं रहा। मदर डेयरी जब हमारे क्षेत्र में आई, हमने उसको बहुत इंट्रोड्यूस कराया। उन्होंने बड़े बड़े छटने लगाए, ग्रेडिंग कराई और प्राइस कुछ दिया। उसमें सोसाइटियां बनाई, सचिव बनाए। सचिव के पास अपना जरा सा भी खेत नहीं, लेकिन उसके नाम से टमाटर जा रहा है, शिमला मिर्च जा रही है, क्योंकि वो ग्रेडिंग पैकेजिंग होती है, उसी में से वो ना खर्चा निकालते। किसान वहां का वहीं रहा। एक तो मैं आपको ये बता दूं, शुरू में फायदा दिया लेकिन बाद में नहीं दिया, तो अल्टीमेटली वो बंद करानी पड़ी वहां से। जो हमारा लोकल किसान था, वो बिना ग्रेडिंग के देहरादून, विकासनगर, सहारनपुर आसपास की मंडियों में बेचता था, उसे अच्छा प्राइस मिल जाता। लेकिन ग्रेडिंग पैकेजिंग से जो है उसको लाभ नहीं मिला। एक कुछ स्तर तक कुछ ही जो टमाटर पैदा होते हैं उसमें से थोड़ा सा तो लाभ हुआ, बाकी को वापस कर देते कि तुम कहीं आओगे बेचो। अब वो क्या करेगा किसान? किसान को तो जो पैदा हुआ है वो सारा बेचना है, थोड़े से तो काम नहीं चलेगा। ये कुछ व्यवहारिक परेशानियां हमारे पास वहां पे आई और हमने कुछ समय साथ दिया, फिर हमने उसे बंद करा दिया सर। थैंक यू।
So first of all, I think, as you rightly said, farmers की एक कोशिश होती है कि whatever he has produced, he wants to sell. There's nothing wrong in that, and he is wanting the markets to at least take care of the produce that he has or the regions produce. So ये तो उसका expectation is always there. And he wants to get a living income from that kind of a cropping, the crop harvest that he has brought into the mandi. We all agree with that. Now the point here is कि mother dairy की आपने बात की है. Mother dairy may have not done as well as you are saying in Uttarakhand. And mother dairy, in fact, was quite a change from what the original cooperative जो structure Amul के time पर Kurian had designed. And I remember Kurian telling me a number of times, Devinder, if I get few years more, believe me, I will bring a cooperative revolution in oil seeds and in pulses in India. I was very happy that at least here was a man who could promise us that it will happen. He of course passed away early in that sense, but then the point is that he wanted to do it. Even now, sir, if there are weaknesses in in a cooperative system that you think, we can roughly work on it and try to see it is improved. But that mother dairy system is different from the Amul dairy, because if you go to mother dairy in Delhi, and I'm sure many of you are from Delhi, you will see that there is a mother dairy for Amul where you put the coin and you get that milk. But on the other side, if you go to the mother dairy, which is vegetables and fruits, it is not the cooperative system that works there. It is the Thekedar who has got the supply system there. So that mother dairy is different from the mother dairy that you see in the dairy sector. So all I'm trying to say is that the more we try to look into these kinds of economic models, I think there is a way out how to see that they start performing efficiently and so on and so forth. That is one. But sir, look at the other part of the country. Sorry, I'm taking a minute. Sure. Look at the other part of the country, sir. If you go to Chhattisgarh, I've seen farmers throwing brinjal. If you go to Madhya Pradesh, farmers throw, even cabbage and cauliflower and not only tomato or onions. That is what is happening. If you go to Maharashtra, where onion is the main crop, again, farmers are throwing onions on the streets. Now, why is it that all these years we have been hearing these stories, we have been reading these stories? If you Google yourself, you'll find it's all full of these kinds of stories. And yet, we have not stood up or woken up to the challenge that we have to encounter, or the challenge that we need to take to see how they can get an assured price, irrespective of whether there is a surplus or whether there is a shortfall. That is something that we have to imbibe in this system. When did you see car makers putting cars for sale? And don't think during the pandemic, cars were also overproduced. There was a surplus. Did they put it on sale? The answer is no. But why is it that the farmers have to throw it and throw it at whatever price or give it at whatever price the markets offer? Is because he has little choice. That is why I'm saying, unless the price is guaranteed, there is no way that he can be pulled out of the distress.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We will be just having a 5-minute break, but request nobody to leave the room, because we just go to redo the stage for the inaugural function to start. No more questions. You can do a breakout session with Dr. Sharma. He'll be around for some time. Thank you. Request everybody to be seated. Please don't move out of the room. Please, all students, please be seated. Our chief guest will be coming soon, so request everybody to be seated.
Good afternoon, friends. Namaskar. It's truly a wonderful moment to welcome you all to Cima 23 in India, in Himachal Pradesh, in Shulani University. So, welcome once again. Just to apprise you, sir, that we've had 2 keynote sessions in the morning, and those went off very well. The audience has been here. Now we're looking forward to the inaugural function. Before we begin, I would request you all to light the lamp while the Saraswati Vandana is being sung.
Sa sa re sa ni pa pa ni pa ma ga ma pa ni da sa pa ni ma pa ma ga pa ni sa ma Saraswati Sharde ma Saraswati Sharde पूर्ण इस अज्ञान उदति से पूर्ण इस अज्ञान उदति से वीणा पाणी तार दे तार दे तार दे माँ सरस्वती शारदे माँ सरस्वती शारदे सूर्य ब्रह्म शिव विष्णु गजानन जिन चरणों को सेवते सूर्य ब्रह्म शिव विष्णु गजानन जिन चरणों को सेवते हम शिशु है अज्ञानी माता इन चरणों का प्यार दे वीणा तार दे तार दे तार दे माँ सरस्वती शारदे माँ सरस्वती शारदे सा pa ni ma pa ma ga pa ni sa.
You. I would now request all of you to rise as we observe a minute of silence in homage to Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, the architect behind resolving India's food security challenge, who passed away on the 28th of September this year.
5 sale, उसको sale करते होंगे wheat, red wheat, तब जाकर रोटी बनती थी. I'm an octogenarian. I've seen those days. How all of a sudden, from a food deficit country, we became a food surplus country. The credit goes to Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. Not along with his team of scientists, but his vision to go for early introduction of the Mexican wheat varieties. It was a big gamble because they are not gone to the extent of the experimentation as usually when the new strain or the variety is to be introduced. So they played, it was then Subramaniam was the Indian agriculture minister. Swaminathan was the then Director General ICR, and Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. At midnight, they signed, well, we are going to take the risk because after a sudden death of Lal Bahadur Shastri, she had taken over the chair and we were expecting a famine at that time. But the Mexican varieties of wheat solved our problems. This university is indebted to Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, and particularly as myself. He has been my mentor. And in this university, we have a photo gallery of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan. And one of the Swamis of the Yoga Satsang Society of India, he's donating a statue of M.S. Swaminathan to be installed in this university that we will be receiving sometime in the last week of November, on the first week of December. I may just add further that in Shulin University, we have the statues of the Nobel laureates, 4 Indian Nobel laureates, 3 Indian Nobel laureates, the 4th one is still alive. And also the statue of Ramanujan, who's a great mathematician. We feel that persons like Swaminathan, these are to be remembered, and especially the younger generation, because we have seen those days, but you have not seen those days, then where food was also a rare commodity, and which we were starving then. So with the homage to Dr. Swaminathan, I have something to read about his biodata because many of you may not be knowing. Hurriedly, I do that. As we know, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan was a legend in the field of Indian agriculture and fondly known as the father of the revolution in India. He firmly believed that agriculture biodiversity is a key for food and livelihood security and worked for ensuring the food security of the country. Dr. M.S. Swaminathan was born on August 7, 1925 and breathed his last on 28 September of this year. Dr. Swaminathan completed his early schooling from Native High School and graduated in agriculture sciences from Madras Agriculture College, Tamil Nadu, and Tamil Nadu Agriculture University, 47. In 1950, he moved to study the Plant Breeding Institute at the School of Agriculture, University of Cambridge, United States. Dr. Swaminathan then accepted a postdoctoral research associateship at the University of Wisconsin and helped in setting up the USDA Potato Research Station. Despite his strong personal and professional satisfaction with the research work in Wisconsin, he declined the offer of a full-time faculty position there and returned back home in 1954. He became the Director General of IRI 1966 and continued, then had key positions in the National Commission on Agriculture 72-79. From 79-80, he was a Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation, Government of India. From June 1980 to April 82, he was a member of the Planning Commission. Dr. Swaminathan conceived the first World Resource Report. He remained the chairman of the Core Committee for the preparation of the National Environmental Policy under Government of India and chairman of High Level Committee for the review of the Central Groundwater Board. At that time, when India was on the brink of mass famine, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, as a then advisor to the Indian Minister of Agriculture, invited Norman Borlaug to India, despite bureaucratic hurdle imposed by the India's grain monopolies. The Ford Foundation and then government collaborated to import wheat seed from the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, Mexico. This was part of the larger green revolution endeavor initiated by Norman Borlaug, which leveraged agriculture research and technology to increase the agriculture productivity in the developing world. Dr. Swaminathan received the Borlaug Award 1979, World Food Prize 87, 1987. The Government of India conferred on him the Padma Shri in 1967, Padma Bhushan in 1972, and Padma Bhushan in 1989. Dr. Swaminathan was active till the last, spearheading a movement to bridge the digital divide called Mission 2007, every village a knowledge center. We are grateful to him for all the contribution to steer the country from the stage of food deficit to a food surplus nation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would call upon Professor Atul Khosla and Dr. Shodhan Mishra to felicitate our guests at the dais. Please, our volunteers, can I request you to bring that, bring it here in the front? Thank you. I'll invite our chief guest for today, Shri Prabodh Saxena, the Chief Secretary of the Government of Himachal Pradesh. Thank you. Next, I'll invite Shri Paul Rasu, the Agriculture and Horticulture Secretary, Government of Himachal Pradesh. Dr. Rajeshwar Chande, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Y.S. Parmar University of Horticulture and Forestry. Our special guest, Dr. P.K. Khosla, Chancellor, Hewlett University. Professor Surajit Sarkar, Vice President, IMA. I'd request Dr. Mishra to felicitate Professor Atul Khosla, Vice Chancellor, Shulini University, and vice versa. Well, thank you. Welcome once again to the 20th Congress of the International Association of Agricultural Museums. This process, or rather journey, which was set in motion almost 2 years ago, when it was decided that the 20th Congress of AIMA would be held in India, has culminated in the event that is on from today onwards for the next 6 days. The presenters and discussants here are from some of the best in their respective fields of expertise, and no doubt bring a wonderfully diverse perspective to the theme of the conference. The event also marks the beginning of a whole new chapter of meaningful work and interactions that we hope would emerge on this very important subject matter in the years to come. as well as perhaps lead to a greater push towards an engaging curation of the many existing agricultural collections that are there in the country, given their crucial role in educating and interpreting for people the significance of agriculture in our lives. Many congratulations to all of you, best wishes, and thank you not only to AIMA, but also especially to our esteemed partners in this all too important endeavor, the Himachal Pradesh government. Shulani University and Punjab Agricultural University.
Over the centuries, and also how do we ensure that there is integration of modern agricultural practices with the past. So thank you very much for choosing Shulani as a venue. I'll talk a little bit about my views about 5 thoughts which I wanted to share with the audience. But before that, wanted to welcome all of you here, everyone in the audience. Prabodh Saxena ji, thank you for coming all the way. Our chief guest for the day, Dr. Paul Rasu, Secretary Agriculture, Himachal. Major changes happening in Himachal. We are a rich state, largely because of the horticulture and agriculture and the great work that you and your team are doing, sir. Professor Chandel from UHF, always a great friend and always so charming. Thank you for coming over, sir. Mr. Klaus Kropp, President of IMA, Member Secretary INTAC, Surajit Sarkar, we've now known you as a dear friend. Nirupama, I've known you now for probably 25 years. Thank you for this. Vijay, Deans, Directors, and students. And of course, everyone else who's here today. Thank you for coming to Shulani. And I would like to thank IMA and Cima and INTAC for choosing a university for Cima 2023. And the reason I mention this is because I'm going to leave a very fascinating statistic for all of you. In India, there's a terminology that we're using called the gross enrollment ratio. That's the number of students who are eligible who will enter higher ed. And we have a GER of around 25%. That basically means that 1 in 4 of our population actually ends up going to college, eligible students. The tragedy of the country goes further. 1 in 10 is probably employable. And when I'm talking about this population, I'm talking about agriculture included. So we cannot make huge strides that we want to do as a nation unless we fundamentally change this statistic. We have more people into higher ed, especially in areas like agriculture. And I think this event will go a long way. So like I said, thank you for choosing a university in India for making this happen, and then your visit to PAU. So I'm going to leave 5 thoughts for all of us today. And I'll go very quickly. These are 5 thoughts which I believe are very important and relevant to this particular conference. The first is about museums. And we've been talking about museums for a long time. Me and Prabodhji have had several discussions, especially around the science museum that Himachal has started. I think the point I wanted to leave is that museums create inspiration, and inspirations create change. So every time we create a museum, something that's inspiring for our students, it's inspiring for the young generation, inspiring even for the faculty and others, the farmers, we can make a dramatic change in society. So what you're doing is actually dramatic. What you're doing is actually disruptive. So keep on doing your great work. Keep on inspiring people through your museums. Let's create live museums as you go around. I think the second point I wanted to talk about is protecting heritage. And I'm not an agriculture scientist, so excuse me if I make some statements which might not be completely true. But I remember when I was growing up in Himachal, Himachal was known as uh, the district or the area for something called Solan Gola, which was a tomato. It was a native species, which due to hybrids and other things which have come in, that whole seed has got lost. There's been a fundamental disruption where we are forgetting what we learned over the centuries. So while it's very, very important to move in the green revolution, white revolution, it's also extremely, extremely important that we preserve what we've learned over the last 50,000 years. That's when humankind started agriculture practices. So your role of preserving those heritages, your role of ensuring that we learn from different parts of the world and bringing those different practices to different parts of the world becomes very, very relevant. So let's make sure that we continue to do that. The third area, which is a continuation to the keynote, which I picked up today, is around innovation. We normally correlate innovation to the quote unquote knowledge class. A lot of people sitting in this room who are scientists or researchers or students. And what I heard today through Dr. Gupta was the fact that innovation is also happening by the farmers, and it's happening in the field every day, every moment. So let's transcript those innovations. But what I'm going to challenge my scientists over here from Shulani is to say that we're very proud of our patents. We've got 1,500 patents. We are one of the highest patent filers in the country. Let's actually take the movement of innovation, take the movement of patenting, for example, from the classroom research labs into the agriculture fields. So let's say that in the next with, of course, UHF also, if you agree, sir, let's get 50 patents which are from the region and from Himachal, from our agriculture farmers, and let's patent them. Let's file the patents. Let's get them granted so that we don't hear about stories like Haldi's got patented in the US, for example. So that's my third thought. My fourth thought comes from my experiences in Switzerland. And Switzerland is no different from Himachal. Switzerland is landlocked. It's got a similar topography and population and demography as Himachal, around 7 to 8 million people. Mountainous, is disadvantaged to Germany, just like we are disadvantaged to Haryana, Punjab, and other parts of India, because we have a mountainous region. So what did Switzerland do as a strategy? They moved up the value chain. And if you think about it, some of the large food companies are actually Swiss. Nestle as an example. And it's been a client of mine when I was in consulting. Huge pharma entities out there, not just pharma, but biotech. Syngenta is interestingly is based out of Basel, a Swiss company. So very large in agriculture and food, but up the value chain. And I think that's a challenge for all of us today. As we think about Himachal very specifically, can we move up the value chain? Not just produce wheat or rice, but actually produce stuff which is expensive, which can have a higher value in terms of both the produce, but also then process it. I think the last thought is about making the change happen. And sometimes we, in my opinion, we underestimate the power of the common Indian. I know this is a popular dialogue of Shah Rukh Khan. We underestimate the power and the thinking of the common farmer. The common farmer is very logical, is taking decisions purely on economics. They don't care about A variety or B variety. If we can prove to them that there is low risk and there's high return, they will go out and produce that. And a classical example of that is apple in Himachal. Through apple, we have transformed the state. And the fundamental question is, can we find more apples in Himachal? And one idea which I'm going to leave to all of you, something which I've been flirting for a very long time, is what I call A2 ghee or Pahadi ghee, which is a superfood, has a high shelf life and is high value add. Can we GI tag it? Can we create a product which is known as Pahadi ghee, which is from Himachal, which is high value as an example, or even honey, like alpine honey, or produce or figure out one particular produce that fits in that framework that I spoke about. And if we can make that happen and identify 2-3 of such quote unquote producers, Himachal's economic progress will change. So how do we do that? We need to work with organizations like yours by creating small microcosms of success. So if you can prove it in a small pilot, which is a commercial pilot, not in a research lab, but in a mini commercial pilot, like I said, the farmers are very smart. They will go out and replicate and scale that up later on. I was having a discussion with one of my friends who runs one of India's largest private equity companies. And I shared this idea of ghee, for example, with him. And he said, Atul, if you can prove it, I'm ready to sign a check of $100 million. So money is not the issue. The issue is proving success, proving the economic models through microcosms. And I think when I think about a museum, in my opinion, it's not just a museum like a traditional museum, but I'm sure you've also thought about it. It's actually a working microcosm, a pilot of a new idea, which you can then take to our farmers and make them succeed. So let's make the change happen. The next 20 years, we were discussing 30 years, are going to be for India. And the reason is pure supply. The reason is the demographics. The reason is stability in our environment. Only a civil war can disrupt India. So there's going to be tremendous demand coming out of India. We have to solve the supply side. We have to solve the food side of it. And we'll seek the support of all these wonderful people sitting in the room, all you wonderful gentlemen who bring an amazing amount of years and years of experience from across the world, our students who are the young minds, and of course, support of all policymakers who are sitting in this room. So thank you once again and welcome to Shulani. Have a lovely next 3 days.
In nature's dance, a story unfolds. From tiny sprout to golden grain, agriculture's rhythm and ageless refrain. Through seasons of sun and rain, in hardship, joy, and even pain, agriculture's heart forever strong, a living tradition where we belong. So let us honor, let us cherish the roots of life that will not perish. Agriculture's legacy, a boundless sea, a living tradition forever free. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to the International Conference on Cultivating Tradition, Agriculture as a Living Legacy. We have gathered here today to explore the profound significance of agriculture as a living tradition. The momentous event brings together a global community of agricultural enthusiasts and experts to delve into the theme, agriculture as a living tradition, with underpinning 5 interconnected sub-themes. First, challenge, chunauti. Second, heritage, virasat. Third, alternates, vikalp. And the fourth, farm tales and tellers. We hope that this Congress will serve as a vital platform to nurture roots of agriculture, celebrate its living tradition, and inspire in its sustainable future. Welcome to Cima 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Mr. Klaus Krupp, and it's a great privilege to invite Mr. Klaus Krupp, President of EMA, for the introduction to International Association of Agricultural Museum, a significant part of our event. Mr. Klaus Krupp is an archaeologist, historian, and a draft kettle specialist that currently manages the Lorsham Laboratory for Experimental Archaeology at the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Lorsch, Germany. Since 2021, he serves as the president of the International Association of Agricultural Museum and is also a committee member in the Association of the Association for Living History, Farm and Agricultural Museum. Klaus Krupp teaches agricultural history and experimental archaeology at the University of Heidelberg, Germany. Over to you, sir.
Good morning from Germany to everybody. And I would like to extend the welcome to all of you in the name of the International Agricultural Association, AIMA. We're very grateful to have this Cima Congress for the first time ever in India, and in this case, in Asia. And my sincere thanks goes to our India conference team, but also to the local hosts, to Sholini University. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for the great work you have done so far. And I am really looking forward, although I can't be there personally for the upcoming days. This will be really an important step forward, not only for AIMA, but also for agriculture in India. Let me use this opportunity to briefly share with you what AIMA stands for and why we think this Congress is an important element to move forward. It is the purpose of AIMA to educate the public about the significance of agriculture to human society, and also to explain the many ways that agriculture has evolved through time, through the millennia, and to facilitate dialogue between museums across the globe about agricultural topics, discoveries, and innovations. AIMA also promotes the cooperation between agricultural museums by aiding the exchange of exhibitions worldwide and exhibits, but also by encouraging governing bodies to sustain support, making detailed recommendations for collecting and documentation, and also for providing a vehicle for the exchange of information on exhibition techniques and didactics. AIMA therefore seeks to stimulate research and exhibition activities so museums interpret not only the development of agricultural production, but also changes in the work and way of life of the rural population over time, and once again on a global scale. In this sense, AIMA intends to extend the work of agricultural museums to cover research, collection, and the representation of agricultural development up to the present day, and through doing so, make an educational contribution. Just like in the founding years, when AIMA was seeking to build bridges from the east to the west during the Cold War, this Congress in Asia will enable the organization to widen and strengthen its network on a global scale. We are very optimistic, as already said, that AIMA will be able to help expand the role of agricultural museums in India, but more generally speaking, also the importance of rural agriculture and traditional skills. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your time. Can we have a huge round of applause, everyone? Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and honored guests, we are delighted to extend an invitation to Mr. Surjit Sarkar, Vice President of AIMA, to introduce Cima 2023. His deep involvement and dedication to the field of agriculture make him a perfect choice to set the stage for this prestigious event. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Surjit Sarkar and expressing our heartfelt gratitude for his presence and contribution to the event. We eagerly anticipate his introduction, which promises to inspire and enlighten us as we embark on this important journey. Can we have sir on the stage?
Has been doing in the past. I'd like to make it clear why we from the India Organizing Committee felt that it would be useful to have such a conference in the country. Partly bringing the idea of agriculture as a living tradition in a part of the world where the majority of people are Asians. And the second is to address what Dr. Devendra Sharma had brought out in his keynote, and which I also want to emphasize. So where do we see the farmer today in the country? I mean, besides having platitudes for the farmer, there is actually very little that goes on about making sure that, as was pointed out, he gets a fruitful price for his labor. But more than that, as was pointed out earlier in the morning, what are we doing with the information that the farmer has? Very often, we find people appropriating that information and using it in ways which are actually have very little to do with the farmer themselves. You're using the biodiversity that the farmer and the farm has held for us in trust, but we kind of, in a sense, break that trust by ignoring them and what we do further with it. And as an association of museums and community net or heritage centers of agriculture in this country, we hope that this bit of kind of fashioning the trust that once existed between the consumer and producer of food, we can bring back again to the table. And on that note, I'd like to kind of thank you and hope to see you for the next 2 or 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your inspiring words. Now, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and honored guests, it is with great pleasure and respect that we extend an invitation to our esteemed guest of honor, Shri C. Paul Rasu, Agriculture, Horticulture, Government of Himachal Pradesh, to share his word of wisdom. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Shri C. Paul Rasu and expressing our heartfelt appreciation for his presence and the wisdom he will bring to this event. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Chief guest for the event, Sri Prabhu Saxena sir. Class group who is joining with us through video conference, the president of IMA, Sri Sarkar, vice president of IMA, and both co-class, they are very my close friends for a long time. Like when I was working in Solon, from that time I was interacting with them, and the university for hosting the first ever agricultural museum conference in India, particularly Asia also. Madam Nirupama, who took a lot of interest and who has put a lot of hard work for organizing the conference, who is from Intac, India. The theme of the conference, which the organizers have kept like agriculture, a living tradition, is a very fitting kind of, theme. I would say at the outset. Like always, whenever a conference happens, whenever a kind of brainstorming happens on the agriculture, so this is to the thanks are maybe the appreciation we are giving to the farming community. So there is a book which is otherwise noted as a Bible for agriculture students and farmers, which was written by a British botanist, Albert Howard. The topic of the book is Agricultural Testament. So this gentleman came to India to study the plants of India. He's basically a botanist. And after coming to India, he diverted his interest towards the agriculture. And later he studied the whole of Indian agriculture. I mean, how the farmers of growing the crops, how what is the difference between Oriental agriculture and the Western agriculture. So in his book, he wrote, the book came in 1930s, early 1930s. So he said that the Western agriculture feeds 3 stomachs. That is stomach of human being, stomach of animals, and the stomach of the machines. And the Oriental agriculture always, concentrated on 2 stomachs only, the stomach of human beings and the stomach of animals. So currently we are in a challenge like how to, keep the agriculture as a sustaining industry, how to, keep the farmers more interest towards agriculture is the challenge. I think that has been kept in the conference. Like one of the theme is the challenges the agriculture is facing in terms of the changing environment, in terms of food security and all, which has been kept. I hope I've been the large discussion. We are also need to, I mean, keep the traditional history. I mean, the traditional agricultural wisdom, traditional agricultural knowledge is also to be kept in mind, and which will inspire farmers and students who want to do agriculture. They will take lessons from this kind of museum, this kind of a conference. Because today the government is also talking about the old way of agriculture, like government is promoting natural farming. Now government is talking about millets. Now government is talking about sustainable agriculture, how the micro irrigation can be promoted. From the government level, so we are giving a large number of schemes to the farmers to promote the micro irrigation in a way to promote the sustainable agriculture. I think these things were earlier also there. It is not a new thing, but probably we forgot those things. I mean, today the universities are concentrating on two major things. Like I will create new technology, I will create new cultivars, and the world things we are forgetting. But I hope this kind of a museum, this kind of a conference will bring back the world traditional knowledge, and which will be preserved for the usage of the stakeholders of the industry. And by using this stage, I would like to, request the VC of Noni Agriculture University, and there are delegates from Palampur Agriculture University also, Noni Horticulture University. I think both the universities and Saloni University also, we should have one division which should concentrate on the traditional knowledge, particularly agricultural history. We have already social science division, which is concentrating on the economics part and the extension part, where the technology is taken to the field. But I would urge, like, this is the time to have a small division on the agricultural history also. I think the researchers, it is up to the researchers to think over that and to take it forward. And regarding the conference, I mean, the challenge is not to organize the conference and to successfully conclude, but take it forward. Like, I mean, when I was also one of the committee for organizing this conference, I was always telling immediately after the conference, we should take it forward. How we are going to digitally document our old stories on agricultural practices and world knowledge which is with us. I think, I mean, the research, the delegates and the participants will come up with the theme and the paper. So how we are going to take it forward, which will be useful to the universities, 3 universities I have mentioned. So with these words, I once again thank IMA to bring the conference to Himachal Pradesh, the state of Himachal Pradesh. And I wish a great success for the conference over the next 3 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and honored guests, it is a distinct honor to extend an invitation to our esteemed special guest, Dr. Sudain Mishra, Member Secretary of INTEC. Dr. Sudain Mishra's remarkable career and her significant role in preserving our intangible cultural heritage make her an ideal candidate to provide a valuable address for this event. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Dr. Sudain Mishra. Everyone, please give her a huge round of applause.
Namaskar and good afternoon. Shri Prabodh Saxena ji, Shri Paul Rasu, Professor Khosla, Professor Chandel, Professor another Khosla, Atul Khosla, and Surajit, Nirupama, and Ratan Che. At the outset, I would like to pay my personal homage to the memory of Dr. M.S. Swaminathan, a doyen in the field of agriculture and food production in India. I was fortunate to meet him in the Agriculture Ministry when I was posted as Additional Secretary for a short while. His foundation had produced a very beautiful film on the significance of rice in the rituals and traditions of the lives of our people. In the film, he emphasized how from birth and throughout life, particularly in every important and significant occasion, we Indians used rice as an auspicious and celebratory grain. Whether it was the first spoon of food that a child was fed, or whether it was a wedding ceremony, or any other auspicious occasion, rice was always used to give blessings by pasting it along with vermilion on the forehead or sprinkling it for good luck. It was indeed an education for me to know and understand the connection between the contribution of agriculture and the heritage significance involved in most sacred ceremonies, to which I am thankful to Dr. Swaminathan. We are aware that agriculture and food production count amongst the oldest activities of mankind. As vectors of civilization, they contain since times of yore the transmitted traditional knowledge, wisdom, and above all, the daily skills of the farmers around the globe, which everybody has been talking about. At INTAC, our work in the conservation and preservation of cultural heritage over the last 40 years has brought to us an acknowledgement of the importance of the theme of your Congress of International Agricultural Museums, Agriculture, a Living Tradition. In India, the Global South, the role of agricultural museums as educational tools is crucial to bring an understanding of such issues, especially for the young. INTAC organizes, this is a little information for you, we organize capacity building workshops for members to understand our living traditions, including agricultural heritage. It also conducts workshops for students and youth through our 6,000 heritage clubs all over the country to create awareness among children living in cities, towns, urban and rural areas on agricultural heritage and its significance in our lives. In this connection, agricultural museums play an important role in providing encapsulated knowledge on agricultural practices and its heritage to young people. We at INTAC recognize that cultural knowledge that agriculture encompasses relies on culturally significant species, knowledge systems, and social relationships. Documenting and understanding this includes rediscovering historical heritage techniques and productions. Through the study of historical testimonies and agricultural sites, we have had many capacity building workshops and other workshops to document agricultural practices and intangible cultural heritage related to agriculture. Our work with intangible cultural heritage, or ICH, historically interconnects with natural cultural landscapes and tangible built heritage. It encompasses traditional music, dance, medicines, food, clothing, languages, oral traditions, and many other representations of cultural identity. As scales of heritage conservation broaden from objects and buildings to ecosystems, the forms of our intangible cultural heritage expands greatly. In connection with museums, I would like to just mention that recently INTAC has been asked by the Madhya Pradesh government to establish a museum for a community. And this community is the tribal Gond community in Jabalpur. So we have used most of the Gond practices of agriculture to depict it in animations, in music, in living traditions. So basically, though it is a homage to the community, it is actually with the background of agriculture that the Gond community's lives have been demonstrated. Similarly, there is another museum which we are putting up in a place called Kagazipura. The very name mentions that it is a paper village in Aurangabad. There are people who've been making papers all their lives and generations. They do not make paper, fortunately, by cutting trees. They make paper by boiling rags and using natural dyes. So there we are now setting up a paper museum, trying to trace the history of paper, minus cutting trees, maybe using reeds, etc. But this is an innovative museum which we're putting up, and I hope it will see the light of day soon. Intac has also taken some direct actions, such as promoting sustainable agriculture in semi-arid regions of Bundelkhand and Rajasthan. These include demonstration of pilot plots and improvement in soil health with reduced inputs in water-scarce regions of India. The concept involves use of green manure, farmyard manure, use of traditional cropping patterns to improve the soil structure. There are some other pilot projects which we have taken up to conserve and propagate native seeds in villages. Intac focuses on conserving and sustaining historical agricultural production and practices through a holistic approach, bringing together different disciplines that help recognize that standing at the intersection of culture and nature, agriculture tradition is a biocultural heritage with living organisms or habitats whose present features are due to cultural action in time and place. Thank you for giving Intac an opportunity to participate in this very important workshop, and I wish this workshop every success. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for providing us the insights to this beautiful journey of agriculture. Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to extend our invitation to our esteemed guest of honor, Professor Rajeshwar Singh Chandel, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Y.S. Brahma, University of Horticulture and Forestry, Nauni, Himachal Pradesh, India. A noted entomologist, Professor Chandel has over 25 years of experience in education and research. Sir has also served as Joint Director, Research Senior Scientist, Entomology, and Principal Residue Analyst. Professor Chandel has headed projects with national and international funding and is a member of various committees in Niti Aayog. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, please welcome Professor Rajeshwar Singh Chandel to the stage. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. The Chief Guest of the Day, the worthy Chief Secretary of Himachal Pradesh government. And besides that, I would say that he has been guiding us, leading us for agroecological practice in the form of natural farming, and the boundaries of which has now crossed not only the state, country, but beyond that. So thank you very much, sir. Professor P.K. Khosla, my teacher, my guide. Our leader as the Secretary of Horticulture, Secretary of Agriculture. And fortunately, he happened to be the doctorate in agriculture from IRI. Dr. C. Palarasu, Mrs. Khosla, and I think the lady who always stood before Professor Khosla to make him a teacher Khosla. Mr. Klaus, the president of IMA, global participants, other guests from India and state. The professor, the teacher of Shulni University, who has the roots back in my university. The Honorable Vice Chancellor of this university, a very charming gentleman, blessed with knowledge, blessed with the humility. And now I can say that one of my good friends, Dr. Mishra, Dr. Sarkar, Dr. Nirupama. At the very outset, my greetings to International Association of Agriculture Museum to host this 20th International Convention on Museums in India. And my greetings to Shulni University to provide this important platform. I, being an agriculturist, although it should be an important part of the agriculture sciences to look at museums, but still it is lacking from our side. Agriculture history is as old as human civilization. And it has impacted the human life. And we can say vice versa. Human life has also impacted the gradual changes in the agriculture practices. Today, my core area, natural farming, we are talking about the natural farming. This word has now become the buzzword across the globe. Everybody is now focusing to have the healthy food. And to my surprise, last week Professor Khosla was talking about the basil. So I happened to be in the Syngenta head office. The biggest company producing the agrochemicals is talking about the agroecology. So that just took me back to the Himalayas. We have the long heritage of the agriculture. And it's different from the entire country, globally also. We have the small fields, resource scarce farmers, but still rich in their technology. It was the full of biodiversity. They understand about the role of the above land biodiversity and below land in the rhizosphere biodiversity. But with the advent of the green revolution, which was the need of the country, which was the need of the hour, which took us out of the hunger in early 70s and till today. But now we are talking to go back to our roots. But who will tell us and our students that it was not like in after which happened after the Bengal famine, and then thereafter the droughts of 50s and 60s, which took us to that level of hunger. Before 200 years back, we had a long legacy of the agriculture. That's why we were known as the Vishwa Guru across the globe. But unless we link back to our legacy, unless we were shown that yes, modern agriculture, that the present conventional agriculture has the many advantages. But if 30% of the land has been declared as the deserted land, then we will have to think back on our roots. So who will tell us and who will carry forward that legacy? So only the museum can help us. So I would say they would help us in preserving this and showcasing the agriculture history, its heritage, its legacy, and ultimate the impact on society. So that would link us to that credible technologies, to that pride. Yes, it's not agriculture with the farmer having half kurta pajama, with the hull in the hand, with the bullocks. That period has gone now. So the present knowledge system of agriculture has to be linked back with our proud legacy. We have a long history, as I have told, but we were never exposed to those literature of Krishi Prashara, of Saga Krishi Kashyapa, Surapala's Briksha Ayurveda. We have sagas of Ghag and Bhandari in 3rd, 4th, 5th century. Honorable Prime Minister was talking about a great saint, Tiruvalapura. So they have mentioned the density of the cloud, the direction of the cloud, when to see it. Nakshatra, they linked, the sowing was linked with the nakshatra. My young friend Professor Sudhir was sitting here. He has recorded the 13 rituals from the tribal area of the Lahol Spiti. They perform when they cultivate the crops. And at the end of the day, when they get the good harvest, they ask for mercy to this motherland for disturbing it for 4, 5, 6, 7 months. So I think only the museums can link us with those legacy. Otherwise, I could felt the pain of the Secretary Agriculture, Horticulture. India has lost 1 lakh varieties of the rice, and Himachal was one of the contributor having 182 varieties of the rice at one point in time. So my humble thanks to the IMA to organize this International Congress on Agriculture Museums. Let's create some digital platforms, smart platforms, which could link us, our young generations, to our old, richest traditions. And by virtue of the humbleness, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Shulni University, Professor Atul Khosla, always shows. From university side, I ensure you that every kind of the sport or every kind of the assistant collaboration which the Shulni University would like to have to further this initiative, we would be very happy. Thank you very much for this invitation, and allow me to present my views from this dais. I wish a great success with the visible outcomes from this conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for being a part of this significant occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, with immense privilege and respect, we extend a heartfelt invitation to our esteemed chief guest, Shri Prabodh Saxena, sir, Chief Secretary of Government of Himachal Pradesh, for his address. Shri Prabodh Saxena's distinguished career and his vital role in the government make him an exemplary candidate to provide insights, guidance, and inspiration for this event. Everyone, please join me in extending a warm welcome to Shri Prabodh Saxena, sir.
And Dr. Khosla, Chancellor, and with him comes the Vice Chancellor, Atul Khosla ji, Dr. Moshra, Professor Chandel, Professor Surjit, Ajay ji, and my colleagues from government, Dr. Paul Rasu, Mr. Manmohan Sharma, the Deputy Commissioner of Solan, Yogesh, everybody else in the audience, including Nirupama and Mrs. Saxena. Very warm welcome to all the esteemed delegates of this prestigious Congress to my state. It is a matter of both pride and pleasure that the Triennial Congress is hosting its deliberations in Himachal, 3 first. First in Asia, first in India, and first in Himachal. So we are honored and we are humbled that you have chosen Himachal, and obviously no better place than Shulni, which is emerging as a shining star in the educational landscape of not only the state, but the country. So I think it's a great mix, such a prestigious conference in one of the most promising institutions of the state. I I'm aware that my credentials to inaugurate this conference are quite suspect because neither I am a practitioner nor I am an expert, but I have some impressions. And the first impression is that I want to introduce many of you to the state of Himachal. Because somebody asked me, why Himachal? 10% of the land is agriculture, 68% is forest. Less than 1 hectare is the average holding. More than 88% of the farmers are small and marginal. Not even 20% of the agriculture is irrigation fed. Then why Himachal for this agriculture museum? Let me tell you, Himachal has tremendous promise, potential, and a great amount of legacy as far as agriculture is concerned. And when I talk about agriculture, I include horticulture. Himachal, there are few countries in the world, very few countries in the world, which have changed themselves in one generation. Europe, America took hundreds of years to transform to an industrial society, to a developed society. Few countries, small countries like Korea, Singapore, they changed themselves in one generation. In India, Himachal, I don't know how many of you actually know, is one of the few states which changed itself in one generation. It became a state in 1971, and I joined the state in 1991, 20 years. And by that time, everything was changed. When the state became a full-fledged state, there were no human resources. There were doctors, there were teachers, there were agriculture extension officers, some from Bihar, some from UP, some from Madhya Pradesh. And by 91, almost the entire state has achieved 100% education enrollment. There was electricity everywhere. Even in places like Lucknow, my father used to struggle in one of the most poshest areas of Lucknow with electricity outage during summertime. Here it was electricity all around. At places where we have not been able to take roads even after so many years. So this state has changed itself in one generation, and I now take it to the same context of agriculture. How in one generation? You know, Himachal has two external factors as far as agriculture is concerned. One was mentioned by Professor Atul Khosla, apple. It came all the way from America. And the other thing is potato. Another very interesting feature of Himachal is higher you go, more prosperous are the people. Unlike other hill states, including our neighboring states of Uttarakhand. Why? Why is that people in Kinnaur and Lahore? Another very stark difference. The tribal districts in Himachal are the most prosperous districts. And they are the districts which were actually cut off till recently for a very long time from the rest of the world. But here they are prosperous. They owe their prosperity to agriculture, to horticulture, to apple, to dry fruits. And now Solan, the deputy commissioner, is here, mushroom. So Himachal, if you go for a feast which is called dham, they will serve you everything, but they will not serve you vegetables. Because there used to be no vegetables in the state. So the dham will consist of rice, it will consist of dal, it will consist of rajma, it will consist of chola, but not vegetable. But now see where we are. We are not only producing vegetables, we are actually producing the off-season vegetable. And my driver, he tells me the name of those exotic vegetables which I can't even pronounce. So this is the generation change. We are 10% agriculture, but we have actually given up various new features of agriculture. But some features of agriculture in Himachal are still unnoticed, which I will talk about. Another very important aspect of Himachal agriculture is that, you know, not many of you may know that in terms of fertility rate, we are as bad as many of the European countries. Extremely poor fertility rate. Last count held about 10 years back says 1.7 state, 1.5 in the urban areas. So agriculture, there's just nobody actually to look after agriculture in the rural areas. And during the Corona times, when there was lockdown all over, and we were very apprehensive, who will pluck these apples? People of Nepal could not come. And the major challenge of the administration was during those days to ensure that we get migrant labor who can work on the agriculture. The lure of the government service is so high. With one child in a family, agriculture is getting unattended. And another very, very major crisis is that because of the wild animal menace and monkey menace, many people are leaving their fields uncultivated. So this is a major challenge of the agriculture. Another challenge of agriculture in Himachal is that we have all spoken about agriculture, and we also know 30 years back when I was in the academy and I was allotted Himachal Pradesh, I had never been to this state. I was asked to present a paper so that I start learning about my state. And the paper which I presented about 30 years back was Himachal as the fruit bowl of the country. But now there are different challenges. The challenges are that we have reached a particular stage, but now there are stages of productivity, and there is huge uneasiness, anxiety as to what will happen if the import duties on agriculture gets reduced. So we are no more competitive in a free world. Similarly, the productivity also is a huge challenge. Crop intensity also is a huge challenge. So we have celebrated our apple, but we need to continue to celebrate our apple. We have to innovate. We have to bring in technology. We have to improve the productivity. We are already running a World Bank project, but yet I suppose that we have to give a new push to apple. Another thing about Himachal which nobody talks about is that, despite the fact that the people here are very educated, they are aware, there's still large number of people in the state. And when we talk about legacy, when we talk about tradition, when we talk about history, huge number of people in this state are still migrating along with their cattle stock for 6, 7, 8 months a year. They go up, they come down. During the disaster, not only we were saving the human lives, but helicopter sorties were sent to locate these people who, along with their cattle, were moving in the higher reaches, and suddenly they discovered that their ration is running down. They have no medicines with them. This wealth is estimated to be around 200 billion Indian. And what is this impact on the agriculture, on the legacy? This is a very neglected area of Indian agriculture. I'm sure that this conference will deliberate on various issues, and this should include one. I would also like to say that another reason why Himachal should be a candidate for this conference is that we have given to India something, despite the fact that we are such a small state with such little contribution to agriculture, is the concept about Dr. Chandel said about natural farming. It started in Himachal. It became a statement in the union budget, and they decided that it is done so well in Himachal and it should not be taken up as an important feature of modern agriculture all over the country. This natural farming is what we call in Himachal as Prakartik Kheti Khushal Kisan Yojana, PK3Y. Now it was recently assessed. It was recently assessed by two think tanks, two outside agencies. One is Manage of Hyderabad and the other was Academy of Management Studies, Lucknow. So I get huge amount of data every day. So suddenly I discovered that in this, there's a huge bunch of a report. And I started reading and I found that it has given a very, something which I was not even actually thinking that it would actually have gone to that extent. So I requested the then Secretary Agriculture that this report appears to be very interesting. It's difficult to read 100 pages. Why don't you organize a small presentation? And the presentation was actually mind-opening, eye-opening. And they have reached to about 7,500 farmers in 25 blocks of the state. And what they have said, that both in agriculture and horticulture, the Prakratik Kheti in the last 3 years, the natural farming in the last 3 years, has shown evidence-based substantial reduction in cost, in disease, and also in use of fertilizers and pesticides. When it comes to use of fertilizers and pesticides, let me tell you a sad part of it, that the incidence of cancer in Himachal is many times more than the national average. And there are many people who say that his incidence is high because in Himachal, the land holding is so small that the farmers actually does an overdose of pesticides. So this study has shown that all this has come down drastically. And since the input cost has gone down, the profit has gone. So natural farming
Is that because we plant them with the left hand, they're shallow rooted and they're not too deeply in the soil.
blocks of the state, and what they have said, that both in agriculture and horticulture, the Prakratik Kheti with respect to the use of chemicals or pesticides, this actually gives a new direction to agriculture. It makes it more healthy, and some say even more tasty. So this is what the agriculture potential of the state is. And before I conclude, let me also say another huge challenge which all of us are facing and agriculture is also facing is the climate change. Climate change is something which actually can put a huge question mark over whatever we are doing, whether in terms of development, whether in terms of academics. This is something which we have to actually grapple, and we have to, the world has to actually challenge it, and we will be able to do. Why we will be able to do? Because about 20 years back, everybody used to think that entire Africa will perish because of AIDS. But Africa is still there. AIDS is something which we have conquered to a large extent. So similarly, if we put our mind together, if we put our resources together, and with such very esteemed people, learned people, people who have strong domain knowledge, if we start taking climate change seriously, we will also be able to, I'm sure, the mankind will survive this also. But we have to start acting, and universities like Shulni and Nani have to take a proactive role in providing the guidance and in providing the solutions. And Prakratik Kheti, a natural farming, is one such change which will be one of the tools in the toolkit of combating the climate change. I've seen the agenda for the next 3 days. There are various issues which are of great interest to Himachal, and whatever little introduction I could give to you about Himachal, it can be a two-way process, something which you can learn, something which you can teach us. And I'm very sure that this conference, which is a great signature as far as the agriculture is concerned, will have a very resounding success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your words of encouragement and also putting into perspective what we aim to achieve through the next 5, 6 days. And also for all the information that we were not aware of regarding Himachal Pradesh. So that was also a big learning for us. Before we wind up for today, I would also like to felicitate one more guest who had joined us at the conference. So I would request Professor Vishal Anand to felicitate Shri Manmohan Sharma, the District Collector of Solan, and the entire administration who has been of tremendous help in setting up this event. Before we go down for lunch, sir, I would also request you to join us briefly for the exhibition which has been set up in the university. So please do have a look at that as well. Thank you. With that, I would invite, sorry, forgot the most important thing, the vote of thanks. I'll invite Vijay Aditya to give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirupama. There's a very long list of people that we have to thank for making this event possible. And I'll start right from the top where government of Himachal Pradesh, Mr. Saxena and his office has been very, very helpful in supporting the conference and making it happen here. Department of Horticulture and Agriculture, Dr. Rasu and his team. We have YS Parmar University, Dr. Chandel and his team. They have offered us their guest houses for many of you who are staying there. Thank you so much. The Deputy Commissioner Solan, Mr. Sharma and his team, and the entire district administration, they have also offered us their administrative support as well as their guest houses where some of our guests are staying. Intact for being our knowledge partner for the event, as well as extending a lot of support. Half of our offices used to be in Intact, and we did a lot of work at Intact for making this event possible. AIMA for giving us an opportunity in India to host this event. This happens every 3 years, and this time it has come first time to India and Asia. Punjab Agriculture University for hosting the next leg of this event. The last 3 days of this event will be at PAU in Ludhiana. We thank them for their support as well. I wear 2 hats. I part of organizing committee. I also am a CEO and co-founder of Ekgaon Technologies. So my team has also been helpful in it. We thank them for their support. Secretariat of the for this conference was based at our offices in Delhi. The Heritage Foundation was the coordinator of the secretariat. We helped them. Organization team composed of many young people. Most of them are students of heritage and culture. Gunjan, was the conference coordinator, not with us in China, but we thank her. Risa is here. Sushmita is here. Diksha is here somewhere. I'm sure. Thanks a lot for all the help that you have provided. Speakers and delegates, all the speakers and delegates, Dr. Sharma was there. Pastor Gupta joined us from South America. All of you, thank you so much. We are looking forward to hear all of you during next 6 days. We last but not the least is our host, excellent host, Shulani University. What a fantastic place. We chose this for helping us choose this place. It has been incredible experience, and I'm sure most of our delegates feel so. Dr. Kesri, Dr. Brigadier Mehta, Mr. Pabbi, Dr. Negi, Dr. Poonam, long list. I think there's 20, 30 faculties are involved in this event. So I'm sorry if I'm not missing out your name, Prasan. So thank you so much for logistics, and everything has been fantastic. So till date, and we are looking forward to other days here. Thank you so much for helping this happen. And last but not the least are the students of Shulani University who have been interning with us and as buddies for our guests. I'm sure all of you have felt that. Thank you so much. You have been incredible support to this organization. Thank you so much. So we'll join for the exhibition now. Thank you.